Yeah. Can people hear me? Yes, can you hear me? Yes, I'm on the mic. Before we begin the meeting officially, Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you. Welcome to Hammersmith and Fulham Council meeting, including our guests in the audience and those watching on YouTube. I'm Councillor Patricia Quigley, Mayor of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, and I will be chairing tonight's meeting. I would like to be addressed simply as Mayor, please. This is a hybrid meeting where councillors may be contributing from home as well as from here in the chamber. Members joining remotely cannot participate or vote on decision reports. To make the meeting more accessible, we will be supported by the British Sign Language interpreters. The meeting is being live streamed to YouTube, and by participating, you are consenting to being recorded. I once again welcome our guests in the audience to this meeting. This is the most important civic meeting of the council. To ensure that the meeting runs smoothly, no heckling is allowed, nor any other type of interruption will be tolerated when people are speaking. This is a personal request, as I am hard of hearing and need good order to manage the meeting effectively. Councillors, if the whip had not provided me with your name and you wish to speak, please raise your hand and wait until I call you. If you wish to raise a point under standing orders, please raise your hand and I will invite you to speak at a suitable point. When called to speak, please state the standing order you wish to use. Please wait patiently and do not interrupt the person speaking. If you wish to raise a point of order or personal explanation, you may interrupt the councillor speaking. However, please ensure your points are factual, brief, and to the point. Please be patient. At the end of each debate or report, I will formally put the recommendations or motion to the vote. For any councillors joining on Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking. I would also like to remind members that it is customary to stand when speaking if you are able to, so you can be clearly seen and heard. If you are watching at home and would like to follow along with the agenda, there is a link in the description on YouTube. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the meeting calmly by the nearest exit, which is through the doors on the right and out the main entrance. Officers will direct you to the assembly point on Blacks Road. The meeting will be taken as adjourned or until it can safely resume business. Toilets can be found through the door at the back of the room on my right. Apology for absence. Do we have any, Sharon?
Yes, no, we do. Apologies for absence have been received from councillors Kwan, Jones, Richardson, Walsh, Rosenberg, Assal Khan, Morton, James, Rowbottom and Councillor Connell.
Thank you, Sharon. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Councillor Smith? Can you put the mic on? I didn't hear you. Okay. Thank you. And there's no declarations? No, okay. Are the minutes, item 3, are the minutes of the last council meeting held on the 17th of October agreed? 2024, agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed, right. Mayor's announcements, item 4. Earlier this month, recommendations of councillors. Earlier this month, Ben Coleman and Emma Apthorpe resigned as councillors. On behalf of the council, I'd like to thank them both for their hard work over the years serving their local communities. I've been informed the leader, Councillor Cowan, and the opposition leader, Councillor Booker-Power, would like to say a few words. Leader?
Thank you very much. I'd like to formally thank former councillor Ben Coleman, now the Labour MP for Chelsea and Fulham, and former councillor Emma Apthorpe for their service to this borough. Service is indeed something that is important to any democracy. So anybody who gives any time whatsoever, I think, deserves our respect at a time when it is so hard for democratic institutions to be strong and to be connected to an increasingly wearied public. It is therefore a huge honour for me to be able to thank both Emma and Ben. Emma was extremely young for me, from my ancient perspective, at 22 to have got elected and served and made us extremely proud as the mayor of the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, where she undertook a number of different duties, and then went into being the lead member for women and girls. In that position, the highlight for me was when she, as a young person, interviewed the famous actress Dame Sheila Hancock on the difference of in age and how women have faced challenges throughout the ages. And I must admit, listening to Sheila and watching Emma interview her very professionally was, I think, the epitome of what it is to make the case, to be a woman and to explain that perspective. So Emma did us proud on that. There are many reasons why people step down from a council position, and especially after just 2 years. But I suspect everyone in the chamber will agree, being offered a job at the United Nations to work on a programme that stops violence against women and girls is a good reason to move on. And therefore, all of us, I think, wish Emma the great success in her new role, not just to make us proud, but for all the women and girls around the world who suffer domestic violence and look to institutions like the UN to make a difference. So thank you, Emma Apthorpe. I would also like to thank my dear friend Ben Coleman for what has been a considerable amount of service. I often used to tease him that this modern establishment of this social democratic administration, shaped very much in the centrist position that we operate, was in many ways crucial to Ben's reactivation as a Labour activist 20 years ago. And I had known him for many, many years, but he made some critical decisions that allowed me and like-minded people to begin to shape a different type of politics in Hammersmith and Fulham Labour. That politics took root and was able to produce a whole range of outcomes when we won in 2014. And it was only right that Ben should play a leading role in all different forms. One of our key interests was to try and reshape public engagement. And if anyone ever went to the Policy and Accountability Committee on Arts, Housing and the Economy in the early days, it was a sight to be seen. I've not seen anything like it before. He would write to hundreds of organizations and people, inviting them to come along and offer their views on a policy we might be shaping. And watching as 60 people took part in a hearing with the microphone being passed around and notes being diligently scribbled to form the basis of what became council policy. As a starting point, active listening, I think, really was put onto a new level with Councillor Ben Coleman. And it was a skill, I think, that we saw him deploy, whether it was dealing with people in South Fulham to hear about their concerns about rat running and filthy air, or whether it was indeed later in all these different aspects as a councillor and now as an MP. But it was as health cabinet member for Hammersmith and Fulham that Ben made a huge difference. He was crucial in the campaign to save Charing Cross. I will one day think I might write a book about how we saved Charing Cross, but I can tell you, getting letters from the government and from government officials threatening consequences that indeed may have seen my house put at risk, it was very good to have Ben Coleman in our corner, and along with a fine legal team working to stop the demolition and indeed secure a different future for our hospital. Ben has always put policy first. At his best, he is a great thinker and a great initiator. The fact that one day when he came into my office and said, I'd like to close North End Road, have acrobats and live bands and give everyone a free market stall to encourage entrepreneurs, you can imagine in any other institution, it may have seemed like a fanciful idea. But knowing that Ben would have thought it through, I said to him, why don't you try and work it out and see if it can become a program? I can tell you that idea is rolled out now. So it's in Wandsworth Bridge Road and it's in Hammersmith King Street. But it is a feature regularly in North End Road. And why did it become a feature? Because many of those struggling businesses and retailers in the shops, but also the traders on the street, they took a single month's trading in a single day. And that was the type of difference that Ben made, and indeed opened up a debate about what are streets for and how should people operate. And when less and less people come into work and more people shop online, how do you save the high streets? And it was that type of creative thinking that I know is being copied elsewhere in London. And it is, again, Ben Coleman at his best. Now, as our MP, he faces a series of huge challenges. It will not, I think, escape anyone's interest, certainly internationally. If I talk to anybody from around the world, they ask me about the state of the country's finances, the state of the country's economy, the housing crisis, the desperate state of the NHS, and so much more. But knowing Ben is in there, fighting somewhat tenaciously, arguing his case, fighting on all these different issues, I think will not just enrich this Labour government, but it will be the type of advocacy that Chelsea and Fulham will enjoy. And indeed, I think it's something that everyone in this council can work along. So thank you, Emma Apthorpe, for your public service. Thank you, Ben Coleman, for your continuous public service and all you did as a councillor in this borough for the last 11 years. Thank you.
Councillor Booker.
Thank you, Mayor. After those fulsome comments, I will just say thank you from us to both Ben Coleman and Emma Apthorpe for their service as councillors to the residents of Hammersmith and Fulham. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to say anything? No? Okay, so before we move on, I just want to say a few words. First of all, I want to wish both Emma and Ben the best of luck going forward with their choosing what they're doing. But particularly, I want to pay tribute to Emma. As most of you will know, she was my teammate for 2 years. When she told me about the job offer, I promised I wouldn't speak on this, but as somebody else did, I feel I can speak now freely. She was a bit hesitant, and I said to her, if you don't take it, I'll push you off the ship myself. I was so proud of her. She has gone to New York. Emma, if you see this, and I hope you will, I'll try to get it to you. I miss you. I miss our Jaffa Cake sessions. And I really, really do wish you the very best of luck. And please do Hammersmith and Fulham proud. Thank you. On behalf of New Year's Honours 2025, on behalf of the council, I'd like to extend our congratulations to local people who were recognised in the New Year's Honours list. Professor Frank Kelly at Imperial College London was awarded the Commander of the Order of the British Empire, CB. Sorry, my thing is bleeping and it's really annoying me. Just hold on a minute. I'm sorry about that. Professor Frank Kelly at Imperial College London was awarded the Commander of the Order of the British Empire, CBE, for his work in fighting toxic air pollution and his work with Hammersmith and Fulham as part of our Better Air, Better Health partnership with Imperial. Community organiser Sharon Tomlin received the British Empire Medal, BEM, for bringing communities together with her work at Sobers, an organisation providing support for local charities, community groups and social enterprise. I'd like to thank them for their hard work and service to the community. I've been informed that Councillor Cowan and Councillor Booker-Powell would like to say a few words. Leader?
I would like to thank everybody who's been given an honour by His Majesty the King. As a British citizen, it is always a deeply moving thing to have someone who is recognised. For me personally, it is great that I know Frank Kelly and particularly well, and I'm grateful to his sheer cleverness at investigating toxic air and the dangers that it causes. Indeed, it was a coincidence that I met with Frank only last week with the Deputy Mayor for climate change to go through some of the initiatives that are going on in London. And as he rattled through the different types of diseases that the air that we breathe in 18 times a second causes, whether it's Alzheimer's, heart disease, strokes, cancer, or stunted human organ development in children, and much more, you could see that this was not just a series of items that Frank had memorized. It was something that he was deeply passionate about and was his life's cause. He has been one of the great people that have made a difference into how we think about our environment and public health. And as a consequence, he was rightly awarded the CBE. And no, I speak for everybody in Hammersmith and Fulham in congratulating him wholeheartedly. Similarly, Sharon Tomlinson is one of those people that you could easily pass in the street and not think a second thought about, other than there's another person who I've walked past. But she is a remarkable human being, a fine human being, because what she decided to do long ago was to dedicate herself to the activity of improving Hammersmith and Fulham. And that's exactly what she does on the ward police panel, but also as an activist in so many other charities and organisations that deal with people often up against it, dealing with poverty, dealing with fear. And Sharon's the person there to try and address that and to make things better. As we've talked about earlier on, society only works when good people volunteer to make it a little bit better. And society only gets better when people really care and put the effort in to make the change. So all the people who are given awards tonight, we are rightly proud of. And I know I speak, I think, across party in saying that everyone here in this chamber is extremely proud of them for being recognised by the King. Thank you.
Councillor Booker-Powell?
Thank you, Mayor. We would like to congratulate Professor Kelly too on being awarded the CBE in this year's New Year's Honours List. Professor Kelly, originally from Northern Ireland, is well known for his work and publications on the health effects of air pollution and vitamin E. More recently, his current work includes Well Home, which is a large study of how indoor air pollutants affect childhood asthma for those living in inner city homes, such as in our borough. Since 2020, Professor Kelly has run his research team with Imperial College and works with the WHO and many other organisations. So again, our congratulations to him on this very well-deserved award of a CBE. Thank you.
Deaths of former councillors. Finally, it's with great sadness that I have to inform the council of the death of 2 former councillors. In November, we learned of the passing of former Conservative councillor Sonia Hilton, who represented Avonmore Ward from 1990 to 2002. I'd like to invite Councillors Lloyd Harris and Alford to say a few words, please.
Thank you very much. Just before I start that, could I also pass on our condolences to the resident that died in the care home fire last night and the 2 other care home residents. This was in Shepherd's Bush. So condolences to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Mayor, Sonia was elected, as you've said, for Avonmore in 1990 and re-elected in 94 and 98. I first met her at a meeting in 1996. She was a warm, intelligent woman with a lovely sense of humour. She worked tirelessly on behalf of residents and held a variety of positions in the council, including social services, direct services, pension fund investments, housing benefits, to name review board, to name just a few. She enjoyed housing and also retained her interest in helping those with leaseholder problems after leaving council. She'd also been a trustee of the Riverside Studios in 91 to 2002. I didn't realise that until actually I was doing some research on her death, and she loved the theatre, so it was just a natural fit. There was talk at one stage of forcing councillors to retire at 70 years of age, until it was found that Sonia was well over that age, probably around about 80. She was such a popular and hardworking councillor, the idea was dropped. I was invited to her 80th birthday party, and I asked her what she was going to do in retirement. I suppose I should have been expected her response. And she said, I'm going to set up another business. Okay, so she had no intention of retiring. It was just another opportunity to expand her interests and keep her busy. I would suggest that Sonia's energy and thirst for work kept her forever young. She died at the age of 103, a truly full life. Thank you.
Councillor Alford.
My colleague has said virtually everything, so I will only say that Sonia and I were elected at the same time together, and we served on various panels and committees together. As my colleague has said, she was immensely hardworking and immensely popular in her ward. She was devoted to Avonmore Ward and served it well. Yes, because of her business interests, she was greatly interested in leaseholders, as I was, so we had many interesting discussions. Another one of her passions, which I did not play, was bridge, but I can tell you that she and my late mayoress often used to play bridge together and remained firm friends until my late mayoress's death. So I can only pay tribute to Sonia and to all her hard work and energy and all that she did for her ward, Madam Mayor.
Leader, you want to speak?
Yeah, I would speak as the leader of the council and just reiterate that Sonia was indeed, as you said, extremely well respected across all quarters of the council. And the reason why was because not only could you have a relationship with her and she was well liked across the council, but she was one of that cadre of elected representatives who just volunteered to keep the machinery of the council working. So she would work on all the different committees that you talked about. She would volunteer to go on almshouses and to work on theatre boards. She was someone who was a proper civic representative. And at its best, local democracy puts people like that up from all parties. They're respected because of their deeds, not their words. And indeed, Sonia was a very quietly spoken person. I can't remember her speaking in the council chamber, but I do remember that no one would hear a bad word against her on our side. And that, I think, is a great tribute to anyone in politics, to be liked by people from all sides. So it is indeed sad. It's admirable that she lives such great age and clearly well deserved, and a lesson to all of us about how to do it. So rest in peace, Sonia.
Earlier this month, we learned of the passing of former Labour councillor Luann Thatchell, who represented Broadway ward from 1994 to 1998. I'd like to invite councillors Karen, Alford and Harcourt to say a few words, please. Leader?
Sorry, I think it's just Councillor Harcourt is speaking on our behalf.
Okay. Councillor Harcourt?
Very much. Oops. Yeah. You know, it's really, really sad. It's something I've said on a number of occasions recently about the number of colleagues and peers who have died over the last couple of years. I'm counting it at about 8 at the moment I've spoken about over the last few years. It's really, really, really sad. And, you know, today I've only just heard about Councillor Sonia Hilton, who Councillor Wolf has just been speaking about. I too sat on a number of benefit appeals panels with her over the years. And as has been said, she was a very quiet person, but thoughtful, and somebody who was easy to get on with. Never heard a bad word about her, and I enjoyed very much working with her. It's actually, in many ways, rather ironic, isn't it, that just as a by-election in Hammersmith Broadways got underway, so we heard the sad news that former councillor Luann Tranchell has passed away. She was elected to Broadway ward in 1994, alongside former councillor Mike Cartwright, who also passed away only a short while ago. I was also elected for the first time at those same elections, but I'd already known Luann for a number of years, as she and her family were well-known Labour Party members and some of the keenest activists in the local party. I recall very much her work for the Hammersmith Community Trust and the Emerald Centre, where the local Labour Party used to hold a number of events. For those of you who don't know the Emerald Centre, it's basically where the outdoor bus stand is on the Hammersmith Broadway now. She was heavily involved in many of the planning issues in the centre of Hammersmith, and even after she left the council, she continued to be a regular attender at planning committee. Her input wasn't just limited to sitting there and attending the meetings. She would always harangue poor old councillor Mike Cartwright for many minutes after the meeting on a whole range of issues after the committee had ended. Luann was a campaigner on a wide range of issues, both cultural and political. And I recall many conversations where she'd come up with new ideas. She was a wonderful person. She had all these fantastic ideas. But as conversations developed, they were becoming increasingly eccentric, which was quite enjoyable and a very keen part of her. It's really sad to hear about this, and I shall be attending her funeral at Our Lady of Fatima Church in a couple of weeks to say farewell to a colleague and a hard-working community and Labour Party activist.
Thank you. And just before we take the minute of silence, I just want to say something like that. Sorry, Councillor Alford.
I will keep this again brief because I have to say that Councillor Harcourt has really said everything I was going to say. But I do know that Luann Tranchell, who I obviously served with, was a very hardworking, passionate member of the Labour Party, which of course I'm not, but a very passionate councillor and believed passionately in Hammersmith. And she did a great deal to promote Hammersmith, particularly with the planning, the Emerald Centre, which I do remember. And she was devoted to her ward and to her colleagues. And I pay tribute to her.
Before I say my thing, does anybody else want to say anything? No? Okay. So just before we do the minute of silence, I'm quite fascinated actually. I'm very sorry, and I wish to pass on my sincere condolences to both families of Sonia and Luann. 103 is a fascinating age to get to. Absolutely fascinating. And I bet she had a few stories to tell. And I'm also very sorry to hear about Luann, as she was a councillor for the ward that I'm actually ward councillor for. So I really do wish to pass on my sincere condolences to the both families, and may they rest in peace. Now, can we please stand or bow our heads for minutes of silence in their memory? So we could say, sorry. Public questions. I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to submit questions to tonight's meeting. Public questions is limited to 20 minutes. If a question does not receive a reply in a meeting, a written response will be sent and published in the minutes. For ease of reference, I have provided a copy of your question for you. The questionnaires called will have an opportunity to ask a brief follow-up question. I've been informed that the first questionnaire is unable to attend, so a written response will be provided. I will move to question 2. I invite Brian Mooney to ask the question to Councillor Wesley Harcourt, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Ecology. Please, can you read your question?
Okay, thank you, Mayor Quigley. Councillor Harcourt, fellow residents. My question, cannabis smoke contains over 50 carcinogens and hundreds of toxins. It can produce mental health problems and disorientation at street level, constituting a threat to road safety. In spite of my input to last year's consultation, no actions are featured in the Air Quality Action Plan. Can Hammersmith and Fulham Council please explain this omission and what it will do to remove the regular stench from our streets?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mooney. Yeah, we do in fact recall when I looked through the responses to the consultation that you did in fact make comments about cannabis smoking, very similar to your input in this question over here. I suppose the answer to this really, and why it hasn't been included, is because residents are able to report smoke and odour nuisances through the report it function on the council's website. However, complaints about odour from cannabis, given that cannabis is an illegal substance, should be reported to the police. This would not be investigated the council as a statutory nuisance. It is an illegality, and this is a police matter. Smoke produced from cigarettes, tobacco, cannabis or otherwise is not considered within the scope of our air quality action plan. While there have been oh dear, excuse me. Where have I got to? While there have been studies showing the air pollution impact of smoking indoors, and there was reference made recently by members here to the work Frank Kelly is doing with Imperial College about air quality indoors. The smoke produced outside, where pollution is more readily dispersed into the air, is not considered a material source of air pollution. As part of the consultation for our Air Quality Action Plan 25 to 30, we received 122 responses to the online survey. A summary consultation response document showing where we made changes to the action plan as a result of resident feedback was published online alongside the action plan itself ahead of its adoption in December. This will be published on the Council's air quality web pages shortly alongside the final version of the action plan. It's actually Appendix 3 in the report tonight, if you wish to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question, Mr.
I'll
Mooney?
try to be brief. Thank you, Mayor, quickly. Councillor Harcourt, I'm not totally happy with that because if you look at, say, lung cancer, the vast majority of incidences of lung cancer come from smoking, particularly heavy smoking, also ionising radiation like X-rays, also industrial solvents and that type of pollutant. You might find that not even 7.4%, the figure which is attributed for deaths due to air pollution, features in lung cancer. Smoking is also quite a big emission. As it's material to deaths from air pollution, will you revise the policy you've just given us and include action against smoking?
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. Yeah, you're absolutely right about smoking and the problems that smoking causes lung cancer and such like. It took God knows how many years, if you recall, before it was recognised about the impact of smoking on lung cancer, and furthermore, after that, actually providing evidence that proved the situation. As I've said, you know, because for the most part, pollutants such as people smoking, be it cigarette smoker, tobacco, or be it cannabis or anything else, the products of those, byproducts of those, are more readily dispersed in the atmosphere. I do take your point, and I'm happy to go back and discuss further with officers whether this is something that we should include in there, because we are already doing work, as we heard earlier today, with Professor Frank Kelly about the indoor air quality and toxic air quality indoors, and certainly things like smoking indoors and such like, and secondary tobacco inhalation, vaping and such like are all issues that perhaps we should look at. But they are in fact a health issue, and it may be something that we need to look at as a wider issue rather than simply as part of the air quality action plan.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Harcourt.
I've been informed that questionnaires for 3 and 4 are unable to attend, so written response will be provided. I will move now to question 5. I invite Hannah Bloomer to ask a question to Councillor Rowan Ray, Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform. Please, can you read your question?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to ask, what is the council doing to keep taxes low, especially for those who are least able to pay?
Councillor Ray.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, Ms Bulmer. It's a very good question and a very prescient one, considering some of the decision reports that we're going to be discussing this evening. This administration has been in office for around a decade, and for most of that time, the national economy has either been sluggish or in crisis. So it's no surprise that there are people across the whole country who are struggling. Council tax is, as we know, a highly regressive tax. The amount that you pay bears no relation to what you can afford, and those on the lowest incomes often end up paying the highest proportion of their earnings as a result. So the fairest thing that we can do is to try and keep it as low as possible. That's why in Hammersmith and Fulham, this Labour administration has cut or frozen council tax 5 times in the last 10 years, giving residents the 3rd lowest council tax rates in the country. But who pays tax is just as important as how much is paid. That's why in Hammersmith and Fulham, we have maintained one of the most comprehensive and inclusive council tax support schemes in the country, one that I am pleased to say we're proposing to continue this evening. Under this support scheme, 4 in 10 households across the borough will qualify for some sort of discount on their council tax. And we are one of only 3 councils in the whole of London that will provide a 100% support for the most vulnerable residents. So those least able to pay the least. I've said it before and I will say it again. There is nowhere in this country where it is better to be a council taxpayer than right here in Hammersmith and Fulham. And as long as we have an administration in this borough, that is how it will stay. Thank you very much.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you, councillor. Just wanted to ask, the discount that you said would affect, I think, 4 in 10 households. Is that something that is automatically applied, or that people will have to sort of apply for themselves?
In most cases, this is automatically applied. It depends on income rates or access to various benefits or pension credits, this sort of thing. Yeah.
Thank you. That's the end of the public questions. Now on to committee reports. Item 6.1, Council Tax Support Scheme for 2025-26. I call on the Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform, Councillor Rowan Reid, to move the report and its recommendations.
Thank you very much. Formally, is it possible to formally move, but then potentially come in later on if anyone's got any questions?
Yeah? Yes. Okay. And I've been informed that councillors Ron Reid, Adam Peter Lang and Jacqueline Davey wish to speak on this item. So are you going to speak, councillor Reid?
I'll pick up any issues that are raised.
Okay, thank you. Adam Peter Lang?
Good evening, Mayor, and thank you. It's great to see you back. Mayor, at about 5 minutes to midnight on New Year's Eve, I considered what scratch vinyl record to play to celebrate 2024, a momentous year when 14 years of Tory rule ended, and all 3 constituencies in Hammersmith and Fulham returned Labour MPs. Well, what better than those mods from Shepherd's Bush, where I live, and Acton, The Who. You Won't Get Fooled Again, played loud and proud. Then I wondered what to play to bring in the new year 2025, a year when we all know liberal democracy will be challenged all over the world and indeed in this country. All of us in this chamber and beyond need to demonstrate that liberal democracy works and can deliver for all. We need to challenge pernicious populism, narrow-minded nationalism, illiberal liberalism and lazy libertarianism. So I pulled out of my record box, Rocking in a Free World by Neil Young. But then I reflected on the many achievements of Hammersmith and Fulham's Labour administration over the past year and past years, and I look forward to many more. And that's why, Mayor, I wish to fully support Councillor Rowan Reid, Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform, colleagues and council officers for their continued and excellent work on our council tax. This is the 13th year of the continuation of our council tax support scheme, certainly 13, not unlucky for some. A £9.1 million investment to support the borough's lowest income families, an annual updating of allowances, applicable amounts and income set out in the DWP Housing Benefit Circular, and all of this against the backdrop £36 million, that's 54% in real terms, reduction in revenue support grant. Plus, of course, the cost of living challenges, energy, fuel and food. And £11 million to be provided to older and vulnerable residents. I think it's also interesting to note that there has been a full review of our council tax support, benchmarking against other local authorities. Hammersmith and Fulham is one of only 34 councils in England out of 326 that has retained its 100% council tax support. So, as Big Ben chimed, I put Neil Young away. He is playing this year at Glastonbury, I believe. And instead, I optimistically pulled out Bob Marley, Three Little Birds. Bob Marley, who famously played at Hammersmith Odeon and recorded some of his finest songs just down the road at Island Records, and between recording, played football with his band The Wailers and local youths in St Peter's Square Gardens. This is my message to you. Don't worry about a thing, because everything is going to be all right. Because Hammersmith and Fulham Labour show that local democracy visibly is working for all of our residents. So I urge all members to support the generous and financially sound Hammersmith and Fulham Council Tax Support Scheme for 2025-26. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, councillor Lang. I call on councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. As councillor Ree just said in his response to Ms Bulmer, council taxation is incredibly unfair. It's particularly unfair to everybody who's on a low income. Charging people who can't pay increases the cost of the public purse more than the amount that is collected. It's a bizarre situation. So this support scheme is pragmatic and sensible, and it sets out to solve some real systemic problems that exist within the council tax system. Now, the difference between the lowest income in this borough and those on the highest income, or actually the average income, the difference between the lowest income and the average income is sixfold, so 1 to 6. If you're in a Band A property, the difference between the amount that you're charged against an average sort of Band E property is less than double, clearly unfair. And if you're in a Band A property, the difference between you and somebody who's luxuriating in a really lovely Band H property is 3 times. Incredibly unfair. So that you see that the greatest burden is on those with the very lowest income. And the support scheme is the lever that we have, the only lever we have really, to try and even up some of that unfairness. If you cannot pay and you're pushed to pay, you're just facing a cliff edge of debt and poverty. And it ends up with local services having to pick up the costs of that situation. A couple of years ago, I get it. It's one of my speeches.
Oh, no.
I understand.
Get better,
A couple of years ago, when I was researching paths to poverty, I was up in a town in northwest England, and I was working, sitting with a team that were talking to people visiting a food pantry, and their role was to try and help people climb out of poverty and climb out of debt. So I'm there. It's this lovely, warm church hall, all wood-lined, and we're waiting for a resident called Amy. Amy had 3 children, and she came in all sort of wrapped up in scarves. She was just in from the school run, and she was a really lovely, really eloquent person. She sort of reminded me of a school friend. She was a really warm individual. And she sat down and she's telling us about how she has got into the situation that she's in. So she was married at quite like in her 20s and had 3 children. And when the kids were really young, the relationship broke up. And that's really normal. Something like 2/3 of all relationships that start in their 20s and have children break up. There's nothing really unusual about that. And then a couple of years later, her eldest was identified with a special educational need, and that's pretty normal as well. So that's sort of like 1 in 6. But special educational needs in the families can really impact on how people live. And then she had a health diagnosis, and at that point, the juggling she was doing to try and keep the family's head above water just didn't work anymore. And for the first time in her life, she was relying on the state to kind of help out. She sat there and she's telling us about how she has burnt through her savings. She's telling us about how she's now using credit cards for the essentials, and she's listing debts. And she's talking about how she is struggling to pay council tax. And this is the point where Amy and I were just so really shocked when her advisor explained to her that her priority now isn't in feeding her family. It's not in her rent or her energy bills. It's about paying her council tax. Because if you miss a date on a council tax payment 3 times in 1 year, you get a final notice and you have to pay the whole lot all in one go. And then it gets worse. Here we've got an ethical debt policy. In the town that she lives in, there is no such thing. And ultimately, if she doesn't pay, there is a threat of a prison sentence, 3 months in prison. So council tax payments come first. Families like her are trapped in poverty and debt.
Councillor Daly, time is up. Thank
Nowhere
you.
near the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? No? Councillor Ree?
Thank you very much, Mayor. You know, in public life, it's important to admit when you're wrong, when you've made a mistake. And I was wrong. Last October, opposition councillor after opposition councillor got up to tell us how they were suddenly concerned with the welfare of low-income pensioners following changes to the winter fuel payments. I said that I didn't think this was a cynical political tactic. I said I thought that this was a sincere change in their position. Well, clearly I was wrong. Here we have a £9 million scheme to support some of the most vulnerable residents in our borough, and they have literally nothing to say about it. Next month, when we meet here to discuss the budget, they will probably claim that they care about low taxes. But when we have proposed a 100% tax cut for some of those least able to pay, they have literally nothing to say. Just like at the October meeting, when they didn't speak on a single one of our decision reports, you could be forgiven for thinking that they have no interest in the running of this council. Well, luckily, based on the last 3 elections, the voters have no interest in them running this council either. Now, Councillor Lang spoke about his record collection and putting on music at New Year's Eve. Now, I certainly can't compete with his knowledge of The Who, but I can tell you that everyone in my generation and all others will be very pleased to see the council tax scheme continue. There really is no substitute for Hammersmith and Fulham Labour when it comes to providing council tax support. Councillor Daly is absolutely right to talk about the inequity, the unfairness of a regressive tax like council tax. And this scheme provides vital support so that we can try and make that a bit more progressive. I won't rehash the arguments about 4 in 10 households across the borough benefiting from a discount. I won't go over the removing care leavers and foster carers from council tax completely. And I won't talk about the 100% discount because we've discussed these before. I'd just like to say that this is a comprehensive, inclusive scheme, and I hope that everyone in this council chamber will vote for it this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is the report and its recommendation? So, oh, sorry.
Mayor, I seldom rise to comments from the opposition, from the administration, sorry. However, it's absolutely not true that this isn't of interest to us. But as we're going to go over it all next month in the budget, there's very little point in me telling you again the bits that you glossed over, because if you didn't learn it from last year's budget, because it was the same, then I doubt you're going to listen to me again in February. But the point is that this scheme was started by us, as you do acknowledge in the written papers now. And I know you will say that you're funding it, and that's absolutely admirable. We didn't have to fund it, but nevertheless, we started it, which made you follow on and not get rid of it, because you couldn't be seen to get rid of something this important. So I will leave it there for now. But anyway, I thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Yep, okay. Is the report and its recommendations agreed? Okay, the recommendations are carried. Okay. Item 6.2, council tax base and collection rate 2025-26 and delegation of business rates estimate. I call on the Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform, Councillor Rowan Ree, to move the report and its recommendations.
Thank you very much. I'll formally move and reserve my right to speak to respond to any points they raised, if that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ree. I call on Councillor Florian to speak.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. First, can I welcome you back to your post? And can I also thank our councillors at Forth and Coleman for their contribution and service to this council. Well, I'm proud to rise in support of this report, and I do have something to say about it. It's presented to us by Councillor Ree, and it highlights one of the many ways that we work tirelessly to improve our residents' lives. It reflects our compassionate and supportive approach. It ensures that we have a taxation policy that aligns with our values and that mitigates the most detrimental effects of council tax, which is, let's say it again, a regressive and unequal tax. Let's talk about housing first. Members opposite have a clear record in this area. Whilst they were asleep at the wheel and busy with leadership contests, owning a house has become harder, renting one has become more expensive, homelessness has increased, and targets were, in the words of Robert Jenrick, missed by a country mile. By contrast, this administration has not just acknowledged the problem, we are actively building the new homes that match the needs of our residents. I'd like to highlight an example in my own ward. It's the Lily Road development. It's just begun construction and the scheme will be self-financing to avoid putting pressure on other council taxpayers. It's going to deliver a modern and upgrading meeting space and will be built to the latest passive house standards of sustainability. In the past year alone, we've added 1,000 new properties to the borough, boosting the council tax base by 1,273 bandy equivalents for the upcoming year. It's more than just revenue numbers. These are homes for families, workers, and the future generations. While others sit back and spread misinformation, we roll up our sleeves and deliver. I will talk about care leavers. As someone who's adopted myself and experienced the care system firsthand, I deeply understand the importance of foster carers and care leavers. I want to acknowledge and value the incredible work that they do every day to provide love, stability and support to those who need it the most. So I am proud to say this administration is also taking a compassionate and progressive approach to care leavers and foster carers. The last Conservative government had met pledges to support them. However, and I'm sure it will be discussed later at length, as usual with their proposals, this came with no additional funding attached or children's social care generally. From April last year, we introduced council tax exemptions for care leavers up to the age of 25, in-house foster carers and special guardians, something the opposition never did. These measures aren't just about financial support, they are an investment in compassion. They represent our unwavering commitment to those people who provide care and support to the most vulnerable in our society. Finally, let's turn to the issue of empty homes. Long-term empty properties and second homes hollow out our communities. In 2024, National Council tax data showed just under 1 million homes were empty or not in use. This included over 260,000 homes officially classed as long-term empty, while over 151 children remained trapped in temporary accommodation. Empty homes are a blight on neighbourhoods and a missed opportunity when so many need housing. And this is why this administration has taken bold action, introducing a 100% council tax premium on such properties after 12 and no longer 24 months of being empty. Not only will this generate over £1 million in additional income for the borough, but it also creates a powerful incentive for landlords to bring these properties back in use. This policy is about restoring vibrancy to our neighbourhoods and tackling homelessness head-on. To conclude, I want to emphasise how these measures align with our broader values. We are proud to lead on ethical debt collection, something I'm sure you'll hear about later, refraining from using enforcement agents for vulnerable residents. Our comprehensive council tax support scheme, amongst the best in the countries, as you've heard, ensures that relief reaches those who need it most. Colleagues, these initiatives represent a council that doesn't just manage, it leads with vision, compassion, and determination. I urge you all to support this report and the remarkable work it represents. Together, we are building a stronger and fairer community for everyone.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Ree?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Chevot-Verdier has given an excellent explanation of the main points in this report and the case for our approach. He's also read the report, so he actually knows what it is we're voting on, unlike some other people. So I wanted to touch on the collection rate element of the report. And it's something that Councillor Daly spoke about eloquently earlier this evening, and that's our approach to ethical debt collection. Now, last summer, the Centre for Social Justice published a report about the alarming increase in council tax debt. The rules around collecting debt from council taxes are actually far more draconian than those for collecting commercial debt. And frankly, they are blighting lives across the country where they are being enforced. If a resident misses 1 month's council tax, as Councillor Daly pointed out, within 3 weeks, they can become liable to be charged for a full year. By week 4, they could have received a court summons, and by week 6, bailiffs could be at their door, sent to collect a whole year's worth of council tax. Now, this is both cruel, but also counterproductive. If a resident can't pay 1 month's bill, what hope do they have of being able to pay 12? The reality is that when a resident cannot pay, this process turns their life upside down. It puts them through enormous stress, and it is hugely damaging to their personal finances. And for the council, it racks up huge costs in pursuing them. And at the end of the process, it's often unable to recoup the money owed because the resident just doesn't have it. As Martin Lewis, the money-saving expert, recently said on his television show about the system for collecting council tax debt, it is counterproductive, it's destructive, and it does not mean that councils will get their money back. It's bad for the individual, bad for the debt collecting council, it is bad for the economy. That is why in Hammersmith and Fulham, we have chosen to do things differently. Since 2017, our ethical debt collection policy has allowed us to provide support for those who are struggling while clamping down on those trying to evade tax. When somebody is struggling to pay their council tax, they can reach out to the council and we will work with them to get them back into a situation where they can pay. We will not send bailiffs to their door. We can help identify benefits or support that they are eligible for so that they can boost their incomes. We can point them towards debt advice so that they can get their finances back in order. We will work out payment plans so they can make manageable payments until they are back on their feet. Not only does this mean that residents who are struggling have a chance to put their personal finances back in order, but it means that they will be able to pay their council tax fully for years to come, helping us to collect more in the future. I would urge anybody who is listening to this, who may be finding it tough to make ends meet and worries that they won't be able to pay their council tax, to get in touch with the council and to seek our support. What our policy also allows us to do is to distinguish between the can't pays and the won't pays. This is a policy to help those who are struggling and to give them a helping hand so that they can continue to contribute. But it does allow us to take action against those who could pay but selfishly choose not to do so. Calculatingly choosing not to pay council tax while receiving council services paid for by law-abiding residents is tax evasion. It places a burden on neighbours who must either pay more or accept reduced services due to a lack of resources. Where a resident can pay but tries to avoid doing so, we have a moral duty to pursue recovery through all means possible. This includes court action, to seek attachments of earnings, to use enforcement agents or charging orders. Mayor, this is a policy that reflects the council's values, compassionate in providing support for those who need it most, while also ruthlessly financially efficient in collecting the highest possible amount of tax owed. It is a policy that has helped many residents who find themselves at their lowest point. It saved the council a fortune in wasted collection fees and raised significant sums to fund services across the borough. We are rightly proud of our ethical approach to council tax debt collection and the impact that it has had. I hope that fewer people will need to use this in the coming years. But for those who do need it, I would urge them to take advantage and to reach out to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is the report and its recommendations agreed? The recommendations are carried. Item 6.3, Hammersmith and Fulham Council New Air Quality Action Plan 2025 to 30. I call on the Deputy Leader, Councillor Alice Sanderson, to move the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Formally removed on behalf of Councillor Harcourt.
Thank you. I've been informed that Councillors Sharon Holder and Starla also wish to speak on this item. Councillor Holder?
Thank you, Mayor. Air quality and the improved health and well-being of Hammersmith and Fulham residents remain a continuing key priority for this administration.
Sharon, can you just move the mic a bit closer,
Certainly.
please?
Yeah, so. Is that better?
Yes, that's better. Thank
Lovely.
you.
Okay. Lovely. Remains a key priority for this administration, not only for the positive impact this will have on the local economy in reducing and avoiding number of work days residents must take off sick, but how an increase in productivity throughout the British economy improves public finances, which benefit us all. This new air quality action plan establishes how tackling air pollution and the climate emergency are not just words from this administration, unlike the previous government's 2019 strategy. This administration does what it says it will do. The following are some good examples of what those priorities actually look like. Provided the necessary infrastructure to enable more active travel, such as walking, wheeling and cycling, King Street, Hammersmith and its increased number of cycle lane users and improved accessible routes for people visiting the borough's high street retail businesses is one example. Another, developing clean air neighbourhoods projects. The success of South Fulham Clean Air Neighbourhood in showing a reduction in over 8,000 cars per day emitting dangerous nitrogen oxide, of which 1 in 7 early deaths in Hammersmith and Fulham are attributed to air pollution. More recently, River Court Road, Hammersmith, where its residents will verify the cut in out-of-borough drivers using this road off the A4 as a cut-through has improved their well-being immensely. Further, our tree planting initiatives to improve the borough's public realm, along with our tiny forests planted in Hammersmith Park in White City, Ilbrook Common, Norman Park and Frank Banfield Park, as well as new sustainable drainage systems helping to reduce the prospect of flooding in residents' homes. Actions to ensure we work collaboratively with our partners and stakeholders on initiatives, policies and projects as shown by our close working with Imperial College and Public Health England on projects. On supporting residents and businesses to adopt car sharing and clean vehicles, this is achieved by supporting schemes use by residents and encouraging startup businesses like the Big Yellow Neighbourhood electric buggies just launched. Reducing building emissions by replacing older boilers with clean heat networks and heat pumps. An illustration of this will be demonstrated in 134 new homes being built at Lannoy and Hardtop Point in Fulham. Indoor pollution, a new area of concern given how long we spend indoors and in our homes and offices. An area of concern this administration intends to tackle head-on in its forthcoming Civic Campus project and in future new planning and development projects. Tackling pollution at schools and journeys to and from is also in progress through initiatives such as School Streets Plus, a further good example of this administration doing what it says it will do, working with schools, parents, students on a range of School Street Plus initiatives. from traffic management orders to green walls and solar panels, planting with children, and information sessions about air quality, pollution, and ecology. This report recommends, as I do, we implement the council's new quality action plans for 2025-2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Starr, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You can choose what you eat, you can choose what you drink, but you can't choose what you breathe. The air we breathe, from our first breath to our last, affects all of us, and research now shows this happens even earlier in the womb. The WHO estimates that around 90% of people worldwide breathe polluted air. According to Public Health England, air pollution is the biggest environmental threat to health in the UK, with between 28,000 and 36,000 deaths a year attributed to long-term exposure. There is strong evidence that air pollution causes the development of coronary heart disease, strokes, respiratory diseases, lung cancer, stunts children's organs, and exacerbates conditions such as asthma and dementia. Hammersmith and Fulham is the 10th worst local authority in England for air pollution, with 7% of deaths in 2022 in our borough linked to toxic air, according to Public Health England. This problem needs to be addressed, and the council's new air quality action plan will help to do so by tackling dangerous levels of air pollution in the borough and help deliver the council's net zero 2030 target. Many actions taken to improve air quality will also have carbon benefits and vice versa. Our goals: climate change and air quality are key priorities for the council, as well as being some of the most important issues of our time globally. The plan sets out some key priorities to improve air quality. It is providing the necessary infrastructure to enable more active travel, such as walking, wheeling and cycling, and has introduced e-cargo bikes, scooters and electric vans to hire. Another is clean air neighbourhoods, already spoken about, including tree planting, sustainable drainage systems and traffic and pollution reduction measures supported by residents. These two clean air neighbourhood projects in South Fulham combined have reduced 15,000 cars a day on residential streets, cutting 1.35 kilograms of nitrogen oxide daily. We're working collaboratively with our partners and stakeholders such as Better Air and Imperial College Healthcare Trust on innovative policies and projects to jointly tackle the issue of air pollution in new and exciting ways. We're supporting residences and businesses to adopt car sharing and clean vehicles, utilising the dense electric vehicle charging network, and proudly boast the most amount of EV charging points in London. We aim to reduce building emissions by replacing older boilers and clean heat networks and heat pumps, raising residences and businesses' awareness of this air pollution and how they may upgrade to cleaner zero emission heat and power sources, and using the planning system to regulate the installation of new energy plant. The Civic Campus is totally carbon neutral free. The action plan is tackling pollution at schools by making local improvements and raising awareness of cleaner walking routes alongside rolling projects programme of school streets. 47 out of our 60 air quality sensors are located near student entrances, selected to monitor the concentrations of the health impacting air pollutants, nitrogen dioxide and particles, PM 2.5. But pollution is not limited to our streets. WHO also estimates that 99% of the population are breathing bad air inside our buildings, and that household air pollution was responsible for an estimated 3.2 million deaths per year in 2020. 237,000 of those were children under the age of 5. With improved insulation of buildings to combat heat loss, it is important that homes and workplaces are well ventilated. We will help advise residents on the hazards of toxic household items such as harmful cleaning products, limit the use of wood-burning stoves, check Hoover filters and isolating printers in the workplace and home. In a time when climate change targets are slipping and evidence of climate change is becoming more apparent in our daily lives, Hammersmith and Fulham remain proactive in our campaign for a cleaner air and a healthy environment. It is crucial for all of us to be concerned and to take positive actions to improve the air we breathe. Our Clean Air Action Plan illustrates how this administration consistently strives to lead, innovate, promote, and above all, passionately care for the well-being of the people living, working, and visiting our borough. Never has there been a more critical time to take action on improving our air quality. The more positive action we take to improve the quality of our air, the easier we will all be able to breathe.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor,
Mayor, it is delightful to see you back in the chair, and I hope Councillor Harcourt is okay, as I have no doubt he would have had something to say on this report. Mayor, the administration has unveiled its air quality plan for the next 5 years, with its aim to tackle the persistent issue of air pollution within the borough. While the intent behind this initiative is undoubtedly commendable, a closer examination reveals significant flaws. The administration's plan isn't really realistic and is fundamentally a bit unattainable. The plan outlines a series of stringent air quality goals, including substantial reductions in nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter levels. While these targets are laudable, there is a lack of clarity on how this will be achieved. The proposed measures, such as promoting electric vehicles and enhancing public transportation, would still not be enough to achieve these aggressive targets within the set timeframe. The plan focuses heavily on traffic-related pollution, and this is a concern. While it's true that emissions from cars are a significant contributor to air pollutions, they are not the sole source. In fact, it is construction sites and residential heating systems that play a substantial role in the deteriorating air quality. Labour's plans basically overlooks these non-traffic sources, failing to propose any comprehensive measure that would tackle them. But Mayor, this comes as no surprise. This administration has been and will continue to have an obsession with cars. Mayor, it does not help pollution to have gridlock. It does not help pollution to have roadworks overrun. And it doesn't help pollution to put in place unsafe cycle routes that make cycling less, not more attractive, as they have done on King Street with C9, on the Wandsworth Bridge Road with the obscene parklets, and as will no doubt follow from the Holland Park roundabout proposal in Shepherd's Bush. On the subjects of cars, there is a huge emphasis on EVs as a solution to air pollution. While EVs undoubtedly produce fewer emissions, they are not a panacea. Mayor, I also cannot help but point out the irony that while they promote EVs, this administration has just started charging them parking charges for the first time. Mayor, for an air quality initiative to be successful, it requires the support of the community. Unfortunately, Labour's plan seems to lack any meaningful engagement with local residents. The plan would benefit from a more inclusive approach, incorporating feedback from a diverse range of community members. It is clear the administration has learnt no lessons from the South Fulham traffic schemes and intends to continue down the route of bulldozing through policy, even when the majority do not agree with it. The financial aspect of the Labour air quality plan also raises certain questions. The plan outlines ambitions, projects and initiatives, but provides limited information on funding sources and resource allocation. Without a clear budget and funding strategy, there is a risk that these projects will go the way of other large capital projects in this borough, with endless delays. I note we're still not in the red monstrosity of a town hall that you are building. While improving air quality is undoubtedly important, the impact these measures will have on our local businesses cannot be ignored. We have already seen how the measures lauded in this report and in the speeches this evening have damaged businesses in South Fulham. Any environmental plan must strike a balance between environmental objectives and economic viability. Failure to do so will lead to further job losses, just as already happened in Fulham, only this time they would be borough-wide. Mayor, this plan is marred by several critical flaws: overly ambitious targets, neglect of non-traffic sources of pollution, a lack of community involvement, questionable funding, and the impact it will have on the local economy. If they want the plan to succeed, Labour should adopt a more realistic approach.
Thank you, Councillor Alfonso. Any more speakers? Councillor Sanderson, are you summing up? See, I didn't hear you the first time. No, okay, thank you. Is the report noted? Great. Thank you. Item 6.4, update on the Upstream London, the vision for the next phase of the council's industrial strategy. I call on the Cabinet Member for Enterprise and Skills, Councillor Salah Khayyam, to introduce and speak on the report.
Good evening and thanks, Mayor. I don't think I could do justice in 5 minutes speaking on Upstream London, but I'll try to sum up as much as I can. All dreams feel the same, one size too big. We have to grow into them. But how do we achieve these dreams if we can't see them, if we can't experience them? Well, this document presents the council detailed vision, Upstream London, to build a borough where every child, no matter what background they're born into, has lots of opportunities and the confidence to grasp them. Thanks to the leader of the council for instigating and tirelessly leading this work over recent years and now for taking it into the next ambitious phase. Tomorrow is made here. Hammersmith Fulham is now a global economic hotspot thanks to the record investment and new jobs working with Imperial College London. Here is how we achieve this economic growth. On 28th of November last year, Upstream London was launched at a new West Youth Zone in White City, hosted by the leader of the council. The vision for Upstream London sets the direction of the travel the council will take to ensure economic growth and is inclusive and improves the lives of everyone in our community. The aim is to make the borough a global hub of innovation and inclusive growth. Upstream London is the second phase of the council pioneering industrial strategy, building on the success since it was launched in 2017. Our vision is outlined in the paper in today's agenda. We're determined that at the heart of Upstream London is a leading model of entrepreneurial municipal government. So a quick recap on success so far and what's coming next under Upstream London, how it began, and to give you the background. An approach developed in response to major changes facing the UK economy and Hammersmith Fulham residents, growth coupled with inequality, rapid social, technological, and economic change. After securing a landslide victory in 2018, Council leader Steve Cowan and Councillor Jones committed to establishing Hammersmith Fulham as a STEM ecosystem, quickly build a wider network to make this happen. In 2016, it was pitched to the then President of Imperial College, Alice Gass, the idea of partnership with academia, inspired by the successful model in Kendall Square and San Francisco Bay Area, with a focus on developing STEM, science, technology, engineering, media, maths, and medicine. In 2017, the partnership led to the launch of the industrial strategy and the creation of a thriving White City Innovation District. It also put in place the condition for some impressive growth, helped to attract 6 billion of high growth business investment, 85% of them in STEM sectors, accounting for 3/4 of the total of West London combined. Helped to create over 3,200 jobs since 2017, now 22,500 STEM jobs in Hammersmith Fulham in 2024. Helped to increase opportunities in our community. Employment rate increased to 78.1% in 2024. Job density now 1.18 job per resident, higher than for London and Great Britain as a whole. What did the council and our partners actually do? Here are some examples. Combining our soft powers and other levers at the disposal, we partnered with Imperial College London to develop the White City Innovation District, changed the planning guidelines to increase the amount of affordable, flexible office and lab space, brought together academia, business, local government in pioneering triple helix model, supported and encouraged companies like L'Oreal, Novartis to make our innovation district their UK base, persuaded global venture builder Blenheim Chalco to develop their flagship scale space digital tech and life sciences community in White City. Through Upstream Nexus, developed a network for new businesses to thrive, hosting 110 open events with over 4,000 members, supported 6,500 local businesses, including 700 plus for new businesses to get started and scale. So what's next? The vision launched in November has its heart an entrepreneurial municipal government approach. That means We are innovative and creative, developing new ways of delivering services so our borough continues to be a place where people want to live, work, and stay. We look for opportunities to help more residents benefit from growth. Our vision sits across three main pillars: pathways, place, and partnerships. Pathway bonds, a new partnership with businesses. By signing up, businesses commit to the principle of providing good jobs, fair wages, skills of the future. Those who sign up will offer a range of opportunities to local communities, enable people to follow pathway into new skills, new careers, and the jobs of the future. Upstream London and its aim are mirrored in this soon-to-be-published London Growth Plan, which uses the Vice City as a case study and acknowledges the innovation developed in Hammersmith, Fulham as important drivers for the London wider economy. Hammersmith, Fulham, and Upstream London is where ideas become a reality. Tomorrow's reality is made here. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been informed that councillors Francis Ume and Rory Vaughan wish to speak on this item. Councillor Ume.
Thank you, Mayor. So it was really inspiring to be at the launch of the next phase of our bold strategy for inclusive economic growth at the West London Youth Zone in White City. Surrounded by businesses, local, national, regional, government officials, community groups, external partners and stakeholders, the list goes on. We mark this groundbreaking initiative that puts residents at the heart of progress. Our leader, Councillor Steve Cowan, instrumental in the vision and the development of this strategy, shared the immense potential that gives people a clearer pathway into new careers and opportunities for all to grow and thrive. This isn't where the journey began. Back in 2017, we launched our industrial strategy, creating an environment that has attracted more than £6 billion worth of money, pounds in growth, investment, and 13,000 jobs. The next phase of our strategy takes our ambition to achieve inclusive economic growth to the next level, to unlock potential for the people of White City and the entire borough. The vision is built on three pillars, as we've heard. First, pathways, opportunities for businesses to thrive while ensuring the benefits flow directly to residents. New skills, future-ready jobs, life-changing courses. We're laying the groundwork for transformation. Second, a place where innovation thrives, where bold ideas take root and become reality. We're creating a hub that fuels development and economic growth for the benefit of everyone. And third, partnerships. Change takes collaboration. So through partnerships locally, globally, London-wide, we're building lasting relationships that drive inclusivity and ensure that no one is left behind. And to make this a reality, as we've heard, we've launched the Upstream London Pathway Bond, a bold new partnership with businesses committed to good jobs, fair wages, and future-ready skills. By signing up, they're pledging to support this community, this borough. Growing up in White City, I've seen the challenges the community has faced and have felt the impact quite deeply. Personally, I actually always had an interest in tech and engineering, as well as becoming a councillor, of course, and had no idea how to get there. Opportunities like that didn't seem to exist for people like me. So, speaking to the young people at the event, many from marginalised communities, it was fantastic to hear how excited they were at the opportunities that lie ahead. They see themselves as the future of biomedicine and AI, and we need greater diversity of voices, richness in thoughts and ideas to solve many of the global problems that we face today. With this strategy, our borough is a global economic hotspot, nurturing talent and creating long-lasting change. Thank you.
Thank you. A call on Councillor Rory Vaughan.
Many thanks, Mayor, for allowing me to say a few words about Upstream, as has been described, the second phase of the Council's local economic growth strategy. I'd certainly encourage everyone around the room to look at what is a substantial and substantive document that was provided at the launch back in November at the West Youth Zone. It really details a vision for the future, working in, as has been a truly innovative vision for the future that's been built over the last few years and will continue to be built over the next decade. It's a partnership, as has been described, between world-leading institutions in Imperial College London, who are very keen to be useful, which is their mantra, STEM businesses, and this council, which is an entrepreneurial, showing the lead in this country in terms of entrepreneurial local government. The vision, I think, as we've described tonight, is to create basically an ecosystem for these innovative partners to drive growth. It's bringing them together, academic, business, local government, to ensure that there are those opportunities for that growth to be made. And it's clear from the launch at the West Youth Zone on White City back in November that this ecosystem is growing. Businesses are attracted by the spaces that are being created by us, by Imperial, and the ecosystem involved in that partnership. These are, as has been described, innovative STEM businesses, the businesses of the future that could, and this was quite clear from the launch, have been located themselves in very different places across the globe. But a number of those businesses are choosing actively to locate themselves in White City, in Hammersmith and Fulham, because of the opportunities they've got to interact with such other partners, such as Imperial and ourselves. And they're seeing the benefit and excitement of creating their businesses, growing them in Hammersmith and Fulham. As has also been alluded to, and it's documented here and will continue, we're hoping over the next 10 years. So over 13,000 jobs have been created in high-skilled sectors, and 6 billion has come into the borough in high-growth business investment. But alongside that, there is the question of what other benefits have been created, particularly for our residents. And one of the things that was very clear from the launch and from the document and from what has been happening is there really are opportunities for our young people from all backgrounds, and particularly on the White City, to develop their skills, the skills that they're going to need for engaging and fulfilling lives. So, for example, one young person with particular ambitions to be a teacher, who I think lives on the White City, noted that they gained some extremely valuable experience working as a youth leader at the West Youth Zone, and gave a very inspirational story about how that had come about, working with a very professional team at the Youth Zone to get an opportunity that might not otherwise have been there. So that leads me to talk a little bit about what's been launched as the Upstream Pathway Bond. So again, this is really supporting young people with great opportunity provided by the partners in this strategy. This will include work placements, mentoring, and work potentially in partner innovation districts abroad, really giving people a lot of opportunities that may not otherwise have been available. I'm sure some of you will have also been interested to see that Professor Jimmy Chu dropped into White City about a month ago and inspired a number of young people from Fulham Cross Academy. I mean, I think all of these, from whichever side of the chamber we sit, are exactly the sorts of opportunities we'd want for our young people. So really, and I'm surprised I've gone on this long, West Youth Zone has really also provided an exciting and innovative feature too. Businesses and local philanthropists have backed this amazing development in Life City, buying into the life-changing opportunities that this really professionally run youth centre is bringing, providing activities and extracurricular support to our young people at low cost. Finally, I'm pleased to note that the interaction of this strategy with H&F's cultural strategy, the Cultural Compact, and the strategy for the visitor economy are also going to be important. And I look forward to hearing more about this as the work unfolds, because we both want people to come and work here, but also to stay here and have both those working here and living here to have that benefit of the enhanced. We've got lots of culture.
Time is up, Councillor.
Enhanced
Thank you.
cultural strategy.
Time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Farrar.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's obvious to us all the pride which the administration has in this upstream report. And I'm very glad that it's being noted at full council. It is important, however, that we take the time to note real history and not revised history. So we must recognise that the key starting point to make the opportunities of today possible started with the initial invitation by our administration and specifically Stephen, now Lord Greenhalgh, to encourage Imperial to come to our borough. There were two major milestones en route to where we are today. Firstly, the sale of the BBC Woodlands site to Imperial on the 1st of September 2009. This 7.7 acre site was the initial purchase of land and allowed the expansion of Imperial into LBHF to begin. Our administration worked closely with Imperial CEO, Dr. Martin Knight, and we committed to helping Imperial realise their vision. Imperial liked what they found in our administration, and so they wanted to make a grander commitment to our borough. So secondly, as soon as they could, in 2013, Imperial bought the 11.5 acre Old Unigate dairy site. This was a defining financial commitment by Imperial, done because they knew they had a council with whom they could work. Imperial's launch on the 6th of March 2013 was attended by Nick Botterill, now the council leader, David Willits, Minister for Universities and Science, the Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, and Imperial's President and Rector, Sir Keith O'Neons. Sir Keith showcased the centrepiece of the new campus, a 150 million research and translation hub, and he crucially laid out the college's vision for a 1 billion innovation ecosystem where 3,000 researchers would work to solve the scientific, tech, engineering and medical challenges of the future. Boris said at the launch, and I quote from the press release at the time, "Here at Imperial, you've got the right answer, which is to capture the flash of inspiration, harness the bang, and convert it into a wallop for the London and the UK economy. And that is what you are doing at Imperial West." So, councillors, please note that Imperial was well underway with its visionary plans when the current administration took over in 2014. From 2017, you realised the potential of working closely with Imperial and your joint industrial strategy was launched. So I would like to congratulate you most sincerely for continuing enthusiastically to utilise Imperial's goodwill and to work collaboratively to the benefit of our residents. It is of huge importance to have in such a small borough the wealth of this expertise and the subsequent opportunities which follow. I also very much appreciated your invitation to myself and Councillor Adrian Pascu to Bore to the breakfast launch of Upstream, your second industrial strategy plan, where you illustrated the benefits of partnership with Imperial and how you plan to act as a conduit between businesses and stakeholders. It was a pleasure to chat to so many energised attendees and hear from confident young people who are benefiting from the improved sports facilities and mentoring. So finally, Mayor, I believe that having Imperial so committed to our borough is something in which all of us councillors can be rightly proud. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Leader?
Yes, that's not a history that is in the document, and you're right that some bits could have been, but I think your take on it is a little bit more proprietorial than history would quite rightly counter. I visited Lord Greenhalgh recently in hospital about a month ago, and we chatted about this subject, and he was very keen to press on me that he had indeed played a significant role. And I was very happy to say to him, yes, you have, because what Imperial will talk to us about is that they had a long-term plan to significantly increase their footprint across all of West London. And they purchased land in Hammersmith and Fulham, and they purchased it in Ealing, and they're looking to purchase it elsewhere, including in other parts of Southeast England. And as you will know from their recent strategy, they have expanded around the globe. What Imperial will tell you is that they found a very good friend in Stephen Greenhalgh, in that he bent over backwards to make sure that planning permission happened and that they could get their vision moved ahead. And that's exactly what we inherited. And so he does deserve credit for that. As my friend Councillor Schmidt said to me over a recent drink, he didn't think anyone on the right could ever have come up with what we've done with Upstream London. And he didn't think anyone on the far left could either. Because on the right, people argue that only the market has a solution, and therefore they try and leave it to do its bit. And on the left, they say only the state can step in. So it is only centrists, left of centre centrists like our administration, who would see the role of social entrepreneurialism tied into government to try and bring a coalescence of all the key players. Not just key players to seek economic growth, and we have taken significant action to extend that, but key players to seek inclusivity. Inclusivity that saw us build £150 million West Youth Zone and Ed City. The looks on those parents' faces when we opened it of total bewilderment that we would spend money on their children to give them that is something I think I will take long into my future. The fact that it's tied in as a bridge into the huge opportunities, the fact that L'Oreal is there, Novartis are there, NATO have moved in, and Imperial are now looking to expand and see Hammersmith and Fulham very much as their home, is a consequence of total collaborative working that hadn't happened before. And that is what we launched at the end of last year. And you don't need to take my word for it. You need to listen to people on the video if you haven't seen it. Whether it's Professor Oscar Sess, who says he's never known collaboration like it, whether it's working with living labs in our borough, or whether it's working with children and teaching them that they too can be a cutting-edge chemist and research scientist, or whether it's Professor Hugh Brady, who said that he had never known anything like it, or whether it was the people from the Italian embassy or the Taiwanese embassy or the businesses that said that they are working with us as one to grow inclusive outcomes, and particularly keen to help their businesses thrive. So yes, there was always a start. Imperial always planned. Interestingly, when we went to see Alice, because we met her in 2016, we launched our strategy in 2017, there were people in Imperial who didn't want to expand and were quite happy winning Nobel Prizes. Why wouldn't you be? But there were other people who'd written papers and said they could become an innovation district. And so we found ourselves serendipitously allied with the people who believed in an ecosystem and a cluster and an innovation district. And therefore, I make this prediction. Two things. This will be the most powerful part of the UK economy by the mid-century. We've now added Imperial College NHS Trust to the Growth Alliance, and we will work to establish life sciences as an even bigger part of the local economy. And we'll make announcements of that in the coming year. But we will also reshape the future in a way that all our citizens can be involved in. And in doing so, I think we can divide a new golden age for the United Kingdom, coming out of this borough, looking to the future with confidence and making sure it works for everybody. Only that could come from centrist social democrats. And that's why all of us in this administration should be pleased to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. I'm just sorry I couldn't welcome Jimmy to my borough. Being a shoe lover, Phyllis, not being political. Are there any other speakers? No? Is the report noted? Item 6.5, Hammersmith and Fulham Private Rented Sector Policy. I call on the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, Councillor Francis Ume, to introduce and speak on the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Single parents, families, young professionals, key workers, low-income earners. They're part of the growing number of people relying on the private rented sector for a place to call home. A diverse group, ranging from those seeking to own their own homes or to start a family, to individuals relying on benefits or vulnerable to rogue landlords and shady agents. Over the past 2 decades, this sector has grown to become the largest tenure in our borough, with nearly 1/3 of all properties now privately rented. This shift did not happen overnight. The growth of this tenure and the housing challenges that followed are a familiar and well-documented story, shaped by decades of national policies stemming from the 1980s, such as the end of protected tenancies, the introduction of right to buy and underinvestment in new affordable housing, and the rise of buy-to-let mortgages, coupled with skyrocketing house prices, have made home ownership out of reach for many and reduced access to social housing. So we've reached a pivotal moment. The challenges are real, but so is the opportunity for change, and we're committed to rewriting the story. This administration has worked tirelessly over many years to improve the private rented experience. Today, we continue to tackle poor standards by cracking down on rogue landlords, tough enforcement, and helping renters in need. Our new policy sharpens this focus. It's been built on in-borough evidence and a public consultation. The message was loud and clear. Private renters face challenges with rent costs, supply, and standards. So to address these issues, there are 4 priorities. Firstly, we'll continue to listen to and support residents, raising awareness of their rights while also ensuring landlords know their duties and meet their obligations. Next, raising standards so homes are warm, affordable, high quality, and safe. Our survey said nearly 40% of renters face quality issues, and measures to address this include a licensing scheme, as well as enforcing the new long overdue decent home standard, which we welcome the new commitment from government. Greater accountability and enforcement is key to ensuring better standards for people such as Olivia, a single mother of 2, thrilled to secure a rental home, but soon faced hidden fees and unfair charges. When she raised concerns, she was hit with a Section 21 eviction notice and lost a significant portion of her deposit. Sadly, her story is far from unique. And so we're committed to cracking down on landlords who exploit vulnerable residents and neglect their responsibilities. We welcome the Renters' Right Bill intention to introduce an ombudsman for the sector, as well as the National Landlord Register. This must extend to all managing agents, with all complying with relevant standards. And finally, creating a fairer, more inclusive sector is at the heart of our mission. The sector is uniquely diverse, housing younger, more ethnically varied residents than other tenures, as shown by the English Housing Survey. Yet, systemic racism, outdated policies, as highlighted by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, have created barriers that persist. Far too many, like residents Amira and Ahmed, hardworking parents of 3, face discrimination in their search for housing, denied viewings, or offered terms that are worse than those advertised. This isn't just a housing issue, it's a matter of fairness and equality. Tackling the housing challenges seen on a national scale will need a holistic approach and improvement across all tenures. So we're doing wider work here. We're doing this by continuing to improve the standards in our own housing stock and have committed to ensuring 3,000 new energy-efficient, affordable homes are built or underway over the next few years. By unlocking the private rented sector's full potential, it can help alleviate pressure on social housing, support working families, and provide a pathway to long-term stability. This policy is essential, and the need for reform is urgent. We are ready to work locally to do this, working with government as well to strengthen renters' rights, to ensure we enhance local housing security and create a balanced housing market that works for everyone. I ask the council to note this report. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been informed that Councillor Lisa Holman also wishes to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, and it's very nice to see you back. As the report states, for many years, Hammersmith and Fulham has been delivering a comprehensive set of measures aimed at improving the experience of those privately renting in our borough. This has been achieved by effective regulation and enforcement by our excellent private sector housing team. I wholeheartedly welcome the council's renewed focus on this area and this policy that's set out in the report before us this evening. And I would ask everyone to agree that this is an excellent report, which is should be highly commended. Together with legislation in the Labour government's Renters' Rights Bill, currently in the House of Lords, steady progress is being made to improve renting for all those in the private rented sector, but in particular, those 30,000 private rented sector properties in this borough. That's about a third of all the homes in Hammersmith and Fulham. Homes in which people have the right to expect decent, warm, safe living conditions, security of tenure, and fair treatment by their landlord, which sadly is not always the case. At the heart of this long-standing commitment to improve the private rented sector in the borough has been our selective licensing schemes, which cover 20% of the borough, requiring landlords to register their properties and offer a decent standard of housing. When we first introduced these, the Conservative opposition opposed them. It would be interesting to know if they still do. Whilst I won't go into the technical details of the different forms of HMO licensing, in October last year, there were 820 mandatory HMO licenses, 4,446 additional licenses, and 3,849 selective licenses held in the borough. That's 9,105 properties we know are HMOs. That's a third of all those rented properties that we're talking about, just demonstrating exactly what an important issue this is for so many residents. Other action to take up to drive up standards was encouraging landlords to join a London-wide landlord accreditation scheme, with registrations up from 608 in January 2028 to 1,260 this year. Trading standards have also undertaken work to look at regulating letting agencies for failing to display and explain clearly their terms and conditions to tenants. Sadly, one of the worst offenders was found to be a very well-known London-wide chain who had dreadful reputation for being unresponsive to tenants' complaints. Hammersmith and Fulham also signed up early to being part of the London-wide database of private rented sector properties. The Labour government's Renters' Rights Bill is proposing to introduce a national one. The bill will also create an ombudsman for the private renters sector, as already mentioned, remove no-fault evictions, which are vital, and not allow landlords to refuse the ability to have pets. One I have personally experience of by inheriting a cat from an elderly neighbour unable to take her pet to with her new property, which made her very distressed. The legislation will also remove the possibility to discriminate those on benefits and stop prospective tenants having to bid against each other for a property. Positive measures that will support what we are doing here in Hammersmith and Fulham. And of course, there are good landlords who engage, sign up for accreditation schemes and belong to things like the National Landlords Association and can have a sensible conversation about proposed legislation at a national level. Hammersmith and Fulham replicating that here in the landlords' forums, which is very important. But for far too long, the balance of power between tenants and landlords has been on the landlord's side. So I welcome the Labour government's legislation, and I wholeheartedly recommend this excellent report, demonstrating that this Labour council is on the side of private rented tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Alford.
Mayor, I shall keep this brief. I note this report as someone who has long campaigned about rogue landlords. I fully support actions that the council takes about any rogue landlord. Oh. I give the mayor a few moments.
No, give us space.
Yes.
We're just taking a break for a few minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can anybody tell me where we actually were before? Do you want to resume, Councillor Alford?
Mayor, I note this report, and as someone who has long campaigned about the bad behaviour of bad landlords, I support any action that this council takes to enforce legislation. We have had a very good private sector housing department, which has cracked down on many landlords. And for that, I have supported them, and I have been well known for that. However, I do have a concern about the legislation being too draconian for some small landlords. I've experienced people coming to me saying they are completely overwhelmed by the forms. Now, it is important that we have the legislation. It is important that people are licensed. I have no problem with that. What I have concerns about is the manner in which sometimes these licenses, they are not getting the support to fill in and do and obey our rules. So I would ask that while I support this report, I would like sympathy and understanding to be shown to small what I call one person or one family landlords. I have no problems with tough enforcement against large landlords and other HMOs. That is essential and important. It is for what I call the small ones who are overwhelmed. Because what I am finding, certainly in my ward, is that many what I call one family landlords are giving up their properties. Therefore, they are serving eviction notices on the tenants, which is increasing the demand for social housing and is inflicting great hardship on private tenants because there is so little available. And it harms the poorer and the weaker members of our society. So while I support this report, I would like some consideration given when we are dealing with specific cases.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No?
No.
Is the reported noted? Right. Thank you. Item 6.6, review of the Constitution. I call on the leader, Councillor Stephen Cowan, to move the report and its recommendations.
Formally moved.
Is the report and its recommendations agreed? The recommendations are carried. Item 6.7, Council calendar of meetings 25-26. I call on the leader, Councillor Stephen Cowan, to move the report and its recommendations.
Formally moved.
Is the report and its recommendations agreed? The recommendations are carried. Item 6.8, review of the statement of gambling policy. Please note that Appendix 8 of this report is exempt, and any discussion of the content of the appendix will require council to pass a resolution on the agenda to exclude the public and press. I call on the leader of the council, Councillor Stephen Cowan, to move the report and its recommendations.
Formally moved.
Are there any speakers? Councillor Santon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We welcome this updated statement on gambling policy, and I would like to commend the licensing team for the hard work that went into producing it, and also, more importantly, to thank those residents and businesses that took the time to partake in the consultation process. In particular, as we've seen in other areas of licensing, the introduction of cumulative impact zones and now gambling vulnerability zones will enable both the licensing authority and also the licensing committees to help protect those who are most vulnerable in our community when assessing new applications. So these are a welcome addition to the borough's policy. We also recognise the importance of the enhanced focus on crime prevention and the safeguarding of children and vulnerable individuals. The measures outlined in the policy, supported by the Metropolitan Police, such as stricter requirements for adult gaming centres operating beyond 10 p.m, and the emphasis on robust risk assessments will help to address concerns around public safety and worker welfare. However, while we acknowledge the progress made, it is also our duty to critically assess areas where the policy could go further. For example, the flexibility to potentially withdraw the long-standing no casino resolution in the future may create uncertainty. Residents have expressed strong support for maintaining this resolution, and their concerns should not be overlooked. Similarly, while the gambling vulnerability zones and cumulative impact areas are a good starting point, there is an argument to consider extending protections to a broader range of areas, particularly in light of the social and economic challenges faced by our borough. It's also vital to ensure that the operational restrictions, such as reduced terminal hours for adult gaming centres, are complemented by broader efforts to address the underlying causes of crime and antisocial behaviour associated with gambling premises. Finally, we must remain mindful of the economic impact these measures might have on smaller operators. Striking a balance between regulation and supporting local businesses is crucial to fostering shared prosperity within our community. So this revised policy is a step forward in addressing gambling-related concerns. As we move forward, we must continue to engage with stakeholders and ensure that the policy evolves to meet the needs of our community. I commend the officers for this important work and urge my colleagues to approve the policy with a commitment to ongoing review and improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Is the report and its recommendation agreed? Thank you. Items, oh, sorry, Councillor
Sorry?
Smith.
Understanding order, we're on item 7 now, sorry, right? Yeah, understanding order 15E3, I ask that special motions be taken in the following order: 3, 1, 2, 4, and 5.
I formally second.
Thank you. Is this agreed? I call on Councillors Dimple and Lloyd Harris to move and second. Oh, sorry. Special motion 3, the future of Charing Cross Hospital. I call on Councillors Dimple and Lloyd Harris to move and second.
Formally moved.
Formally second.
I call on Councillors Dimple and Lloyd Harris to speak for the opposition.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, Ben Coleman stated in his parliamentary campaign that, quote, Labour has promised to rebuild and modernise Charing Cross Hospital, that it is, quote, long overdue, and that he will work day and night to get it rebuilt as soon as possible. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, stated that, quote, only Labour has a plan to deliver the change our NHS needs. And he specifically named Charing Cross Hospital as one of the key priorities. Well, it is true that they have delivered change, but it is not the change the electorate voted for. I personally sat with the management of Charing Cross, with the Health Secretary and with Greg Hands. We discussed the clear plan and funding commitments that the Conservative government had made to refurbishing Charing Cross. That has indeed changed. We learned this week that Charing Cross will not start until after 2035. It isn't even in the first tranche of hospitals to be renovated. To make matters worse, Labour have tried to hide this from the public. Wes Streeting cynically released the news on the same day as the US President's inauguration, hoping that it would slip under the radar. Ben Coleman staked his political career on Charing Cross, painting himself as the local champion who saved it. He even posted social media videos outside Charing Cross, expressly promising that it would be rebuilt and modernised. It was, for a long time, expressly stated as one of the campaigns he was most proud of. He has now taken that down from his website and seeks to delete any trace of it. Labour said during the campaign that they had a fully costed plan for the country. That was clearly false. No doubt the party opposite will now get to their feet and say there was a fiscal black hole and that things are much worse than they realised. The public simply are not buying that nonsense. They either lied when they said they had a fully costed plan, or they're lying now. But even if there was a black hole, Rachel Reeves has raised taxes by £40 billion, far surpassing the alleged black hole, yet Labour chooses not to spend it on rebuilding Charing Cross Hospital. Indeed, rather than rebuilding the NHS, what the Labour government has done in its first 6 months is remove the winter fuel allowance, put VAT on school fees, taxed working people with an increase in national insurance, cracking down on benefits, and given bumper pay deals to their union paymasters. To those sitting opposite, I ask you, is this what you campaigned for? What did you promise on the doorstep about Charing Cross Hospital? Are you now going to support Ben Coleman despite the fact that he and the government have betrayed you and the people of Hammersmith and Fulham on this key election pledge? Ben Coleman is unsurprisingly not here this evening to speak to this motion. Indeed, he has tendered his resignation as a councillor, recently, no doubt, because of the shame and embarrassment. Whilst his resignation as a councillor is welcome, it does not go far enough. His election to Parliament was based on a lie. He must resign as the Member of Parliament and call a by-election so the people of Chelsea and Fulham can elect their MP based on the truth. As to the terms of this motion, I ask each of you opposite how you can refuse to call on the government to secure the future of Charing Cross Hospital. That's what the Labour leader of Westminster Council has done. Why won't you?
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd-Harris.
Thank you. If you're all right with this, I won't be standing for the speech. Thank you.
That's
Mayor,
fine.
Thank you very much. Mayor, I think we'd all like to hear what action the administration is going to take on behalf of residents and patients to lobby the government to reverse this disastrous plans for Charing Cross Hospital. Charing Cross and St Mary's Hospitals are two of London's major teaching hospitals, and both are part of the Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust. They have a reputation for medical excellence, despite their crumbling buildings. It's time the buildings received the upgrade that they so richly deserve, and which the Conservative government reconfirmed prior to the election. Under the Conservative government, even considering COVID-19 and financial constraints, the Secretary of State, Steve Barclay, repeatedly confirmed that the refurbishing would take place, albeit floor by floor. Now we don't even have that. It's not uncommon for governments to release bad news whilst other major events take place. And so it was during the Trump inauguration that this news was released. Secretary of State Wes Streeting announced that the news that most people dreaded, Charing Cross and now St Mary's, are not in line for any works until at least 2035. Jeremy, a resident of mine, said, "I'm deeply upset that we now have a Labour council, mayor, MP and government. They immediately renege on all promises to continue the refurbishment of Charing Cross Hospital. I feel that they've betrayed the trust of our local community. It's shocking. Now that the Labour Party is in power on all levels, there can be no excuse for saying that the council are not being heard by the government. So can they please tell us why the refurbishment of Charing Cross is not going to take place until 2035? It would appear that Councillor Coleman does not have quite the power and influence he thought he did. But even if he's stepping down as a councillor, so he doesn't have to face all those residents who believed in his rhetoric, he will find that as an MP, he can't hide. Charing Cross Hospital has been a concern ever since I moved here nearly 30 years ago. Will it be redeveloped? Will it be sold off? Will departments be moved to other hospitals? Labor has constantly tried to get political capital from this. Now we have a Labor government in situ. What are their plans? Well, we now know that they are not interested in medical care in this part of London. That is obvious. How else could you interpret their ill-thought-out decision? So now Charing Cross is in the second tier of hospital groups. At least with the Conservatives, we had a floor-by-floor refurbishment. That now seems like a luxury. One resident suggested crowdfunding. I'm thinking, no. What about asking major corporations, entrepreneurs to donate funds for a floor with naming rights? Oh dear, that's not going to work, as Rachel Reeves and Zakia Starmer have frightened them off. Well done. Labor has been in opposition for 14 years, plenty of time to think about possible solutions to this problem. The finances have been available for people to read, think tanks have had their say, and yet again, no solution. What is obvious is that the government is no friend of the NHS, the elderly, the sick, or those trying to make ends meet. And Ben Coleman, MP, is more interested in his nice role in the Health Select Committee than in actually standing up for his constituents. I'm prepared to support sensible proposals that will reduce the decaying, and in some cases, crumbling buildings. I've had several stays in Charing Cross Hospital over the last few years. The standard of wards varies significantly, from those with holes in the walls, no locks on the lavatory doors, and mice droppings. The refurbished ones are bright, clean, and leave one with improved mood, which aids recovery. My recollections were echoed by a cancer patient I spoke to over the weekend. The Labor government and ex-councillor Ben Coleman may finally come to realise that the general public are not stupid and do not have short memories. You have let everybody down. You should be ashamed of yourselves for trying to deceive the public. Caring for the NHS? Obviously not. Caring for union mates? Oh yes. Residents will be waiting to hear what you're planning to do to raise the profile of Charing Cross Hospital and ensure that, as you have kept promising over the years, it will be refurbished. The clock is ticking. Thank you.
Thank you. An amendments have been submitted with the motion. I call on councillors Jacqueline Daly and Adam Peter Lang to move and second the amendment.
Formally moved.
I call on councillor Daly for the Do you need some time to read? Okay. I call on councillors Daly, followed by Lang, to speak for the administration.
Thank you, Mayor. When I got to page 922 of the report pack last week, I was so angry. This empty little one-line motion. How much thought did this take, this hollow little shell of a line, and its nasty deceit that this government is somehow responsible for the current state of Charing Cross Hospital and the mice? How dare you? It's 12 years since the Conservatives were in administration and colluded to sell off the land and reduce the number of beds there from 360 to 24. The plans to close our hospital were published and they were widely reported. Your plans were publicly challenged back in 2014, but it wasn't the Labour members that thwarted you, it was residents. They asked for our help, but they asked for your help. But you were too busy telling them that there were no plans. It was all a figment of our imagination. This administration, then in opposition, commissioned an independent public inquiry. Labour members fought side by side with residents to save our hospitals, and it worked. 6 years ago, the statement was published that announced that plans to lay waste to Charing Cross Hospital would not be taken forward. The residents had won. What a brilliant display of local democracy. What a brilliant opportunity for Greg Hands. It took just a few short weeks before he was out with his claims to have single-handedly saved Charing Cross, like some toy box Batman, and without an ounce of shame, having spent the previous years swearing blind that there were no plans. So that's how 7 years passed, 7 years of opportunity to improve Charing Cross Hospital. Then came Matt Hancock and his claims of, and let me get this right, a long-term strategic investment in the future of the NHS, properly funded and properly planned, which were pushed back until Steve Barclay finally shoved it all the way back to 2035. And what do you think has happened at the Department of Health in the last 6 months? Do you think that when the hospital curtain was pulled back, there were beautifully laid out plans for a floor-by-floor refurbishment with shiny timing plan and a fat little budget attached? And Wes Streeting looked at it and went, nah, not bothered. Or do you think it far more likely that when the curtain was pulled back, there was nothing there? No identified budget, just a hollow shell of a project with absolutely no substance. So now we can see that it was all lies, not a single serious plan made, not a penny put aside. The whole much needed and anticipated second wave refurbishment exposed as a sham, a hollow, empty vessel. You just can't trust the Tories with the NHS. We see you. You have laid waste to Charing Cross Hospital over the past 14 years. Do not come here with your pernicious one-line motions behaving like pigeons on a chessboard. Shame on you. You had the chance to be serious politicians with this motion, to put forward ideas, ambitions, and hope. Shame on you weaponising your own shortcomings and pointing fingers. Wes Streeting has been open and transparent. He's created what he describes as an honest, funded and deliverable programme to rebuild our NHS. We all hope it might be possible to deliver it earlier. We do. But we now have a roadmap we can believe in and a genuine desire from central government to make public health a priority again, and thank God for that. In answer to your so-called motion today, we have a government commitment to secure the future of Charing Cross Hospital for all our residents, and it took a Labour government to get us here. The public have the right to hear the truth. Thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to fully support and second this detailed and very important amendment. As an insulin-dependent diabetic, I regularly visit the Charing Cross Diabetic Clinic for appointments with its outstanding healthcare staff, and I have been doing so for many years, long before I was a councillor, with a host of other patients. And boy, would the patients, the staff there and myself welcome a new clinic and a new hospital. But we all know the economic legacy, the financial mess left to the incoming Labour government from the misrule of 14 Tory years has not allowed for that. Something of a hospital pass. Of course, we can all remember back in 2019, over 5 years ago now, the then Prime Minister boasting about building 40 new hospitals. And Mayor, where exactly are they? Not a single new hospital was built in the past 5 years, and there was no credible funding plan to build 40 in the next 5 years. Along with residents and patients, I was very worried about the Tory hospital closure programme some years back, supported by local Conservatives, that planned to sell off the Charing Cross site for exclusive housing, leaving just 13% of that site. Our world-renowned diabetic clinic would close. Thankfully, the Hammersmith and Fulham Labour administration, along with local residents and others, including Save Our Hospitals campaign, stopped this. And on the 26th of March 2019, the closure programme was scrapped. So we should take no lectures from Tories, both in this chamber and beyond, about their commitment to the NHS and Charing Cross Hospital. And again, recently, the former Tory MP for Chelsea and Fulham, in a pretty desperate bid to stay in power, claimed without any foundation that parts of Charing Cross were to be refurbished. Well, have we seen that? In 2019, the Conservative government agreed a floor-by-floor refurbishment of Charing Cross by 2030. Interestingly, in May 2023, this was binned by the Conservative Health Minister, Stephen Barclay. So for all of us in this Labour group, diabetics included, we will work tirelessly with the community, with our residents, with medical experts and the government to find ways to fund and support Charing Cross Hospital, to ensure that our hospitals, our healthcare system, their infrastructure, our NHS, left broken by the previous government and by Tories locally and nationally, thrives and grows. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been informed that councillors Perez, Vaughan, Florian and Cowan also wish to speak. Councillor Perez.
Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak in support of this important motion. I want to start by expressing my heartfelt gratitude to the incredible NHS staff at our local hospitals, its dedicated leaders, doctors, and nurses. Over the years, I've experienced outstanding care, and I'm deeply thankful for the exceptional service they provide. The compassion and commitment of our frontline workers have profoundly impacted my life, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. Mayor, we must remember the challenges we faced under the previous Conservative government regarding the new hospitals program. Their tenure was marked by misleading funding claims, unclear timelines, and vague project scopes. In fact, they removed Charing Cross, St. Mary's, and Hammersmith Hospital from the program entirely. There were false promises that misled the public, hurting NHS leaders, patients, and communities. Since Labour assumed office last July, Ben Coleman MP has explained how they inherited a situation with no established timeline or financial commitment for the rebuilding process. The government has had to confront and remedy the consequences of the Conservative government's poor decisions. However, there is reason for optimism. The recent announcement on the new hospitals program is a significant and positive development, ensuring the future of Charing Cross and other hospitals is secure. I commend this motion as it represents hope for Hammersmith and Fulham to expedite efforts in bringing forward the plans for Charing Cross Hospital. Our administration has a strong track record of advocating and delivering for local health services. One notable example is our successful opposition to the Conservatives Shaping a Healthcare Future program. When we took office in 2014, we commissioned Michael Mansfield QC to conduct a public inquiry, which concluded that the plans were deeply flawed and had to be halted. Thanks to our efforts, the closure of Charing Cross Hospital was stopped. Additionally, we have organized scrutiny meetings, ensuring transparency and public involvement. We have engaged with residents to co-develop policies that directly influence local service provisions. By listening to their personal experiences and stories of individuals in our community, we have incorporated the insights into our recommendations. Our strong track record demonstrates our commitment to listening to and caring for our community while advocating for their healthcare needs. It is a testament to the pledge within this administration to work with the trusts and our newly elected local MPs to protect and improve services, urgently refurbish our hospitals, and defend our local NHS. I urge all members here tonight to stand with our residents, support our plans, and endorse this amended motion. Together, we can create a brighter future for our local healthcare system. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughan.
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this motion, the amended motion tonight. Tonight's motion from the opposition is a good reflection of their achievements in relation to Charing Cross. Thin, lacking in substance and entirely disingenuous. Words that help to summarise their shameful approach to the hospital over 14 years of Tory government. The achievement of this administration, working side by side with residents, is that Charing Cross is still here. We haven't been left by the clinic supported by the opposition when they ran this council. So let's just recap, we've done some of it already, as to what very nearly happened to Charing Cross, as things could have been very different. Our local NHS went on a rocky journey with the launch of the Shaping a Healthier Future consultation in June 2012. As we've heard, it proposed Charing Cross becoming what was disingenuously called a local hospital, essentially a clinic 13% the size of the current one, with few services on site. A suggestion we and residents found, you'll be unsurprised to hear, appalling. There was, and you'll be surprised about this, initially a cross-party campaign against the proposals, which gathered tens of thousands of signatures. The two parties actually demonstrated together outside the town hall, but that unity didn't last long. In February 2013, the former Conservative administration backed the plans for Charing Cross, this 13% of the size clinic, negotiating with the NHS behind our backs and those of residents. They claimed at the time that they'd won concessions. An infamous leaflet to residents claimed that Charing Cross had been saved. You'll remember the one, it had saved in big red letters across a picture of Charing Cross. No one was fooled by this, and the Conservatives, having been given the benefit of the doubt on the NHS, destroyed any trust in their administration and any trust in their handling of the local NHS. But thankfully, Labour-controlled Ealing Council threw us a lifeline by referring the proposals to the Secretary of State, another authority having to come to our rescue. The Independent Reconfiguration Panel then reviewed the plans in summer 2013 in consultation with residents and concluded that lots of further work was needed about what was going on at Charing Cross. NHS bosses then told us various stories about what the different format of services would be at the downgraded Charing Cross. We posed questions at the time, but didn't receive the answers. So then, in 2014, the new Labour administration, working with residents, took a different tack. As we've heard, we and other North West London councils commissioned the independent Mansfield report on shaping a healthy future. That damning report said that the plans needed to be halted. The chair, in a withering assessment, stated that the reforms, both proposed and implemented thus far, are deeply flawed. We also refused to sign up to the so-called Sustainability and Transformation Plan, which included the continued implementation of Shaping a Healthy Future. We commissioned a follow-up review of Shaping a Healthy Future and the STP. And very importantly, we held health bosses to account by letting residents themselves, including many dedicated Save Our Hospitals campaigners, to come along and ask the questions they wanted health bosses to answer. This included, on one, if not many occasions, lengthy discussions unpicking those plans in detail. As we've heard tonight, fortunately, this pressure led to the right result when, in 2019, the previous government had to drop its plans for Charing Cross. Hammersmith and Fulham Conservatives should be continuing to express sorrow and regret for their actions. They claimed all was well time and again. It wasn't. They claimed we were telling lies. We weren't. They shamefully turned their backs on the residents of this borough. So, to conclude, the lesson of the past 14, now 15 years is this. This administration fights for Charing Cross. It fought for Charing Cross. It will fight for Charing Cross. The opposition and their former government pushed plans time and time again against the wishes of our community. It's not time to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Thank you. Councillor Florian, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, good night, is it? Mayor, last time I spoke to you at our last meeting, I used the lyrics of a song to emphasize that trust is like a mirror. I explain how easily it can be shattered and how the cracks appear in their reflections. Trust is the foundation of our democracy in our community. When it is broken, people disengage, they turn away, and sometimes they never come back. Today, I return to this theme of trust because recent events here and abroad remind us of the fragility and the dangers of undermining it. Trust is not just broken through actions, it's also corroded by words. In an era where disinformation spreads faster than truth, a lie can circle the globe before the truth has tied its shoes. This strikes at the heart of our democracy. When trust is eroded by disinformation, elections are questioned, institutions falter, and societies fracture. But disinformation doesn't spread in a vacuum, it requires enablers. Those who, knowingly or without realizing it, amplify falsehoods for personal or political gains. To members of the opposition in this chamber, I say, reflect on your words and actions. How are you contributing to disinformation? What future are we building if we prioritize scoring points over presenting facts? And we've seen the consequences of disinformation in my ward. Take the West Kent and Gibbs Green estates. In 2008, they sold these thriving communities to developers, promising regeneration while misleading residents about the true cost. The loss of 750 homes, the displacement of 2,000 people, and the destruction of social housing. They claimed it was progress, but many in Labour fought back, and thank you to them. Community leaders and residents stood firm, and we made saving these estates a cornerstone of our vision. This wasn't just a political victory, it was a victory for trust, for people who refused to be silenced by empty promises and manipulation. So we see similar tactics at play here at Charing Cross Hospital. You've heard it from colleagues. The opposition claims millions have been secured for refurbishment, but the truth, no timetable, no secured funding, and no real plan. It's another empty promise designed to mislead. These 40 promised hospitals have become a symbol of a broken trust. And as I reminded in my previous speech, even to care leavers and foster carers, the promised funding has failed to materialise. Labour is committed to a different path, realistic, funded timelines that deliver progress, not propaganda. As we debate these issues, let's aim higher. Let's recognise that the stakes go beyond a hospital or an estate. They're about the kind of politics we embody. Are we leaders who inspire confidence or cynicism? I leave you with the words of one of the most consequential women of the 20th century, Eleanor Roosevelt. People grow through experience if they meet life honestly and courageously. This is how character is built. So therefore, I invite the opposition to meet us at this moment with honesty and courage. I invite them to join Hammersmith and Fulham Labour Party and the National Labour Party to rebuild trust, not just in this council, but in our democracy. Because if we lose trust, we lose everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader, you wish to speak? No? Okay. Although sorry, didn't see your hand. Councillor, you wish to speak?
Thank you very much, Mayor. We've talked about trust. Both sides went into the election with promises. The question is, how long did it take for the side that won to break theirs? What changed? Now, we've heard lots of talk about the economy. No one is denying that there were in-year spending pressures that materialised as Labour took over, as is the nature of government spending, especially 3 years after a spending review. And that led to difficult circumstances that you had to deal with. I get that. There were circumstances, incidentally, that the Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies said these pressures were obvious to anyone who dared to look. So did people not bother to look? Did the Chancellor not know how? Or was it just a game of chess? Because the point is that we would be in a materially different position on Charing Cross had the economy been run better after Labour took over. Because we know what the next move has been. Since then, £40 billion more taxes, £70 billion more spending. It's been a programme designed to get growth up that only succeeded in getting gilts up. And we've had value for money. It's of course important we look at that. We've had an office for value for money set up by the government that the Treasury Select Committee says is poorly defined and has no clear plan. I'll absolutely refute any idea that there's no alternative to making the cuts that have seen Charing Cross delayed. You don't have to spend 9 billion trying to give away trade-offs. You don't have to stuff union mouths with gold to stop them striking, only to see a continuation of striking. You're in charge. You can choose. And I worry because people say there's a fully funded plan, but budgets only stretch for 5 years. And I don't see the economy getting any better. You know, there's a constant cause and effect that since July, the economy has been talked down and investors have stayed away. Taxes have been put up on jobs. Companies have stopped hiring. Unemployment's gone up by 47,000. That's 47,000 people not paying taxes in, receiving benefits instead. People's ambitions have been thwarted. Ambitious people have left the country, so have their taxes. Now, none of this is particularly difficult stuff, regardless of whether you're in the economics team or the customer complaints team. In fact, for the Chancellor, given the economic news we've had, it's quite good to be in customer complaints. But, and this is the main thing, had the economy not gone so badly in the last 6 months, we might now be in a different place. Just this week, we've seen latest economic figures. Borrowing hit 17.8 billion in December. That's 10 billion pounds more than the time last year. The cost of servicing debt has increased to 8 billion this month, every single month. How many hospital beds is that? How many refurbished wards is that? There is no money. But this is on Labour, and this is on Labour's inability to run an economy. And when a government loses control of that economy, it is normal people that suffer. As former councillor, Ben Coleman is where he wants to be, in the Commons, on the Health Select Committee. He's fine. But for the rest of us, these delays mean delays, cancellations, and worse health. And if councillors want to campaign against these delays, I'll join you. The big problem is that before the election, people were cynically whipped up by Labour on a promise of change. They just didn't say it would be a change for the worse. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. I now put the, sorry, Leader. You wish to speak?
Please, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And I would just simply say that the speeches on the other side, with a little bit of exception from the last one, but certainly the first two were some of the worst explanations of being a public representative who cares about the health service I think I've heard in my total time in the chamber. It is quite frankly, is it naive or is it deliberately misleading to argue that because you spoke to Michael Gove, who said that the hospital would be refurbished, when there's no plans, no plan, no finance, no plan to have a plan, that somehow meant there was a floor-by-floor refurbishment. There was no plan to have a floor-by-floor refurbishment. It was a total mistruth and a deliberate attempt at subterfuge and misleading of the public. And all of you who do that, don't just undermine the Conservative Party. As Florian said, you undermine the very nature of what it is to be a democratic representative. You should apologise for that level of subterfuge because people genuinely care. And it's not like there's no history to this, is there? In 2012, I found myself in a public meeting standing side by side with the Conservative leader of the council and the cabinet member for health. And the public was shouting at them, chanting at them, you can't trust the Tories. So I stood up and said, yes, you can. How stupid do you think I felt after that? When a year later, they left the alliance to save Charing Cross Hospital and said they'd saved it while agreeing to have it demolished, most of the land sold off to property developers, and then replaced with just a small clinic, which they were going to cynically call a hospital. All of you joined the Conservative Party, put yourselves up, knowing that was the record. And they denied that all the way through to 2019. 25, all those years when you could have been refurbishing it. But no, it was not going to be refurbished because they were going to demolish it. Okay? And then guess what? We saved it because they couldn't make the plans work because we took a legal action based on the fact that they had to prove that it would not damage public health. And they couldn't prove it. So the hospital closure was put back to 2021, then 2025. And by the time they started talking about 2029, they gave up. And then there was this plan to have a floor-by-floor refurbishment, which Matt Hancock introduced. But as soon as the new health secretary came in, Steve Barclay binned it. Now, what did Greg Hands and what did these people say when it was binned? Good news. Good news, they said. And it was not good news, it was bad news. So don't give us the nonsense that somehow Charing Cross has been well looked after when you were custodians of our health service. Locally and nationally, you're not fit to get anywhere near our treasured National Health Service. Now, tomorrow I will meet with Imperial and I will meet with Ben Coleman and Andy Slaughter, and we will go through plans to see what we can do to help. But £25 billion has been put into the NHS, and we welcome that, something you guys never did. And you can hear from your speeches talking about winter fuel allowance and whatever waffle you were coming out with. It was nothing to do with saving the NHS. So let's stand up. Let's stand up and say one.
Well, I think unfortunately everybody heard what he said, and I think it was offensive.
It's true.
Time and time again, no interruptions. I don't care who is speaking, the opposition or the administration, no interruptions. I will not have it, even though I don't have my gavel. I am asking for you to please remain silent while speakers are talking. Thank you. Leader?
Thank you, Mayor. So this motion, the council calls on the government to secure the future Charing Cross Hospital for all our residents. It is secured, but it needs a lot of work. It needs billions of pounds worth of work. And I tell you who's going to fight for it without fear or favour, this Labour administration. You should be ashamed at the glee that you showed when that announcement came out. One of you, who I have a lot of respect for, actually tweeted there was secured a floor-by-floor refurbishment by Greg Hands. It was not. If you're a civil servant, you know full well there are plans, they go through due process, they're signed off. None of that happened. And you've stuck to that subterfuge, just like you stuck to the nonsense about Charing Cross not being under threat, and the public will never forgive you. We don't. As Florian said, you need to go and have a long, hard look at yourselves. And some of you should not be in public life if you're prepared to carry on like this.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Sorry, I'm conscious of time. Are there any other speakers? Councillor from Fulham.
Mayor, tonight you have heard from the Labour benches a desperate defence of the indefensible. They have rolled out the same pre-prepared lines that their new MP put in his communications. But fundamentally, the public knows the truth. They said one thing during the campaign, and they have enacted something completely different. And this is what people have come to know about this new government. Mayor, we on this side will fight for the future of our hospitals. Lest we forget, during the general election, now Secretary of State for Health, Wes Streeting, said, there was no mincing of words. We are committed to delivering the new hospitals programme, including Hillingdon Hospital, St Mary's, Whipps Cross and Charing Cross Hospital. And yet it took him a matter of weeks to put that programme into review. And now we have the results. Charing Cross will be delayed until 2035. Now, Mayor, I remember the debate in this chamber a few months ago when the Conservative government had to amend that programme due to the financial pressures caused by a once-in-a-generation pandemic. I can only assume the reason Charing Cross has been put on the back burner by the Labour Party is the malaise they've inflicted on the country during the last 6 months. Bringing us back to that last debate, I recall a certain councillor for Lily Ward wiped the theatrics that evening. So many promises. Now that councillor sits on the green benches. And what do we in Hammersmith and Fulham get as a result? Whip fodder, who has failed to get even the most minor concessions from his friend, the Secretary of State for Health, for our local hospitals. Mayor, that councillor has now resigned, and one can't help but ask, why now? Why did he not go immediately after the general election? Or why did he not stand down in 2026? Or does he just like costing the taxpayer money? Triggering a by-election he should have called immediately. But then again, this is the councillor that kept receiving his allowance until the double dipping was pointed out. I can only assume then that he is so toxic to the local Labour brand that it's better than for lose a by-election than face the music for their collective broken promises. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? I now put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Those not voting? I declare the amendment carried. Are there any other speakers on the amended motion? No, yeah. I now call on Councillor Dinsmore to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. That was truly shocking. Not a single word of contrition nor apology for the clear promises that were made. You say now there is a plan. There is no plan. It's to start after 2035. You can't commit to spending after 2035 now. It's a tier 2 hospital. It's not even in the first tranche. Only the leader of the council hinted that you might try and do something. None of the rest of you said how you would lobby on behalf of residents. None of you talked about trying to get a campaign going to try to help it. That's what this special motion's all about, trying to secure the future for Charing Cross Hospital. None of you want to talk about its future. All you want to do is give the same old history lesson about a campaign 10 years ago. Residents are not going to be interested in that campaign. What they're going to be interested in is this campaign now to see if it can be saved. Now, Ben Coleman made clear promises. They have been broken. Those are the facts. That's the reality. You love to have a go at the Conservatives about NHS. We had record spending on the NHS. Why were the 40 new hospitals not built? Because we had a once-in-a-generation pandemic that cost £400 billion. That's the facts. And we
Sorry,
have vaccine
Councillor Dinsmore, sorry for interrupting you. I'm asking again. No interruptions, no noise, not even laughing, please. I'm conscious of the time. Thank you.
We had the COVID pandemic with 400 billion of spending, which this Conservative government led to a vaccine rollout, one of the quickest in the world. You've now been in power nationally for 6 months. Do you stand behind Ben Coleman? Are you going to pressure him to pressure the health secretary? Because all of your speeches sounded like nothing wrong, nothing to see here. No apology, no contrition. There's only so long that you can continue to blame other people until you have to take responsibility for the decisions your government are now making. And residents deserve better. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is the amended motion agreed?
Yeah.
I now put the amended, no? Do I do that?
Yeah.
I now put the amended motion to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Those not voting, I declare the amended motion carried. Right, members, please be patient. The meeting is finishing time is 10:19 PM. Special motion 1, commending the government plan on planning reform. I call on councillors Mary and Genevieve to move and second.
Formally moved.
Thank you. I call on councillors Genevieve and Starla to speak for the administration. Please note, this will be councillor Genevieve's maiden speech. No heckling, no laughing. Go ahead, Genevieve.
Mayor, thank you for inviting me to deliver my maiden speech on this important motion, commending the government on planning reform. But first things first, I'd like to thank the residents of Fulham Green for giving me and Councillor Campbell-Simon the honour to serve them. Councillor Campbell-Simon and I are indebted to our amazing volunteers led by Councillor Reid and Councillor Schmidt, and most importantly, to our residents. I'd also like to pay tribute to our predecessors prior to the changes to the ward boundaries. Councillors Holder, Rowbottom, and Ben Coleman MP for Fulham Broadway. Councillors Loveday, Stainton, and Thorley for Parsons Green and Walham. And Councillors Brocklebank Fowler, Brown, and Donovan for Town. I thank all of them for their service to our new ward. I was born in London to Igbo parents, a people of southeastern Nigeria for whom generosity, hospitality, and warmth are integral. So, when my mother was asked to provide our Pollen Day volunteers with tea and biscuits, she heard, provide them with fresh fruit, fried plantain, jollof rice, pizza, roast chicken, a salad, soft drinks, a stir fry, and of course, tea and biscuits. I thank my mother and my family at home and abroad for their steadfast support and strength. I'd also like to express gratitude for my closest friends and confidants who've remained loyal to me through life challenges and my local election victory. Together, we've achieved extraordinary feats, challenged norms, and pushed beyond the limits of our abilities. On average, the residents of Walham Green are young or middle-aged, healthy, and wealthy. Yet, despite the ward being generally wealthy, it has pockets of deprivation which have interlinked issues, including overcrowded households. Housing associations and local authorities aren't financing new affordable properties because they're focused on repairing their existing ones. And a large number of investors aren't purchasing new properties because they're worried about building regulations and planning permission. As a consequence, developers and house builders have responded by reducing the number of properties which they're prepared to even attempt to get through planning, and hence the number which they intend to construct. Most analysts concur that planning reforms are absolutely critical if the new Labour government intends to accelerate the development of new properties. Therefore, the new government's proposed reforms to the law on compensation for compulsory purchase, which will permit more house building in places precisely where properties are required, would be a good beginning. So, I was heartened to hear the new government introduce a planning and infrastructure bill during the state opening of Parliament, which will further improve compulsory purchase reforms, admittedly introduced by the former governments, will improve how planning decisions are reached by modernising planning committees, and will streamline the planning process for critical infrastructure. I'm pleased that the new government has reached the decision to build new homes, new GP surgeries, and new schools. Joking, sorry. I was raised and still live in Walham Green. And as a councillor for Walham Green, I'll guarantee that every single decision I reach in this chamber is relevant to the set of circumstances in which my residents find themselves. I'll be a councillor who defends our National Health Service and defends our residents in need of social care, who protects our ecology and protects our economy, and who stands up for high quality homes and stands up for superb schools. I will devote my time in this chamber to standing up for my local residents, my local community, and the local services on which each one of us depend. The residents of Walham Green expect the best.
Genevieve.
And that's the way I'll serve them.
Genevieve.
Thank you.
Yeah. What?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Genevieve, well done.
Thank you.
It does get easier, I promise you. To come from maybe to sum up.
No,
Councillor Starler, would you like to sum up? Is it?
Yeah, to speak.
Just wait, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. That's going to be a hard one to follow. That was brilliant. It was the Clement Attlee government that passed the first Town and Country Planning Act in 1947, where planning permission was required to develop land, and ownership no longer conferred the right to develop land. There was also the New Towns Act at the same time in 1946, where we saw the need for, where he had the vision for new towns because there was a need for because there was a need for more housing and post-war, to rebuild post-war Britain. Some may say that the planning system is kind of frustrating and hard to navigate, but it does matter. It mattered post-war for Clement Attlee, and it matters for us today. And this is why. 138,900, this is why it matters. 138,000 are the number of children in temporary accommodation as we speak. 1 in 23 children in London, homeless children, displaced children. 4.3 million, the estimated deficit in the number of homes the country needs. The accumulation of all the young professionals in flat shares well into their 30s, all the adults living with parents, all the families in cramped and overcrowded homes, long past their shelf life. Planning is the very system of regulation that either enables or prevents those homes from being built. It's the very tool with which we can fix the housing crisis today. And that, far from being a bureaucratic point, is a deeply moral one. Housing is a human right.
Starler, I'm sorry for interrupting you. The guillotine has now fallen. Please, can you wind up your speech as it passed the guillotine time? Genevieve, do you want to exercise your right to reply to sum up the debate?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, been a bit of a weird night, you could say. All the motions published.
Mayor,
Oh,
Mayor, understanding order 14, I would like to withdraw 7.4.
okay,
And likewise, under the same standing order, 7.5 would be withdrawn.
okay. And
And sorry, and so 7.2 and 7.5.
basically all the other motions.
Basically, all the other motions.
Okay,
There you are.
okay. I haven't, we haven't finished yet. Sorry, I'm still talking. So which, okay, special motion 1. Is the motion agreed?
Agreed.
Well. Agreed, no? So do we have to?
Yeah. No?
No, we're
Okay.
doing a vote. Okay. Got voting sheet? Yeah, okay. Those in favour, please. Those against? And those not voting? The motion is carried. Are we finished?
Yeah, good night.
We're finished. Good night, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Let me run out and catch them. Sorry. I'm gonna run out and catch them. I'm coming back. They came a long way. Let me run out and catch them. I'm coming.